Riven stopped the moment he saw the children at the art table. Two small faces lifted toward the light, and his breath thinned. The boy's brow, the girl's steady eyes, the quiet focus in the way they held their pencils. He knew those features. He had lived with them in the mirror for years. He didn't move. He didn't speak. His chest tightened as if the room had closed around him. No one else noticed the shift, but he felt it in every part of his body. Those children carried his face, his expressions, his calm stare. He felt the truth before he allowed himself to accept it. 5 years had passed since he last saw Calla walk out of his home with steady steps. 5 years since the night he failed to open his mouth, failed to protect. His own wife failed to draw a line where a line should have been drawn. Now he stood in a renovated community center, looking at two children who pulled him back to that single moment of silence that cost him everything. He didn't know their names yet. He didn't know their favorite snacks or stories. He didn't know how many birthdays he missed. But he knew one thing the second he saw them. They were his. They were hers. They were the life he lost through hesitation. 5 years ago, Riven let silence end a marriage that could have survived if he had spoken one clear sentence. He watched his mother strike Calla, and instead of standing beside his wife, he froze. That pause carried a weight that followed him through every empty room and every night he tried to sleep alone. Now he faced the outcome of that moment. Two children who should have known him from their first breath were looking up at him without recognition. The truth hit him harder than any confrontation he had feared in the past. Silence had not protected peace. Silence had cost him his family. He felt the loss in a way he could not soften or excuse. 5 years had passed, and he still carried the memory of Calla walking away with quiet strength. He remembered her steady voice when she said she was leaving. He remembered how she didn't raise her tone, didn't plead, didn't blame him. She simply chose peace when he failed to give it to her. Now she stood across the room again, holding a small cup of water for paintbrushes. She looked calm, composed, and whole. He could see the same steadiness in the twins. Her influence, her care, her patience. He also saw the reminder of everything he had lost. This time, silence would not protect anything. This time, silence was no longer an option. Before Riven even spoke, one question filled the air around him. How do you face the past when it stands in front of you with two small faces that look like yours? Many viewers know this feeling in their own way. Have you ever wished you said something sooner? Have you ever watched a single moment change the direction of your life? Have you ever stayed quiet to keep the peace, only to lose something important? Calla's calm strength meets Riven's regret here, and both sides show something real. She built a peaceful life for her children with steady choices. He learned the cost of hesitation through years of emptiness. Their paths cross again because life has a way of bringing truth forward when you least expect it. So the question becomes, what does a second chance look like when the first chance was broken by silence? These are the moments that test people. They shape families. They reveal who learns from the past and who repeats it. And today, viewers will see how these two parents decide what rises from what fell apart. Calla approached the table with the same steady grace she carried through every season of her life. She wasn't flustered. She wasn't shaken. She simply moved toward her children with quiet purpose, placing the small cup of water beside their brushes. The twins didn't sense any tension. They stayed focused, coloring houses with wide windows and soft lines. Their innocence stood out in the room. Lauren's careful strokes. Caleb's slight frustration with his pencil. The small hums they made when their drawings pleased them. They lived in a world Calla built with intention, a world free from raised voices and harsh words. Riven took in every detail. He noticed how Lauren leaned against Calla without fear. He noticed how Caleb glanced up at her for reassurance before returning to his work. He noticed how calm the three of them looked together, like a family shaped by gentle routines and steady love. Calla finally lifted her eyes to Riven. She didn't flinch. She didn't guard herself. She simply watched him with a clarity he hadn't earned before. In that moment, he understood how much she had grown. He understood how much she had protected her children from pain. The shock on his face wasn't only about the twins. It was about the woman she became without him. Every story teaches something, but this one carries lessons that stay with you. This reunion shows how love grows when people act with intent. It shows how respect protects peace. It shows how second chances work only when honesty returns to the center. Calla built strength through steady choices. Riven learned maturity through loss. The twins carry the best of both of them, and their presence forces truth into the open. Before we continue, welcome back to the channel. To new listeners, thank you for joining this story today. You are part of a community that values real emotion, steady growth, and meaningful lessons. If you enjoy stories that highlight purpose, love, and choices that shape families, you are in the right place. Take a moment to like this video, share it with someone who values strong storytelling, and subscribe so you never miss a new release. Your support helps this channel reach more people who need stories with heart. Now let's return to where everything began, to the evening that changed Cala's life, to the moment silence cost a marriage, to the night that forced her to walk away and build her world from the ground up. Cala and Riven built their early marriage around quiet routines that made their home feel steady and warm. They didn't live through dramatic highs or crushing lows. Their days formed a soft rhythm. Cala woke earlier than Riven most mornings, setting water to boil for tea while he finished emails from the previous night. She liked the stillness, the few minutes when the world had not yet started asking for anything. When he walked into the kitchen, half awake, she always slid a cup toward him without a word. He always touched her shoulder lightly in return. It became their morning exchange, a silent greeting that said they were facing the day together. Evenings carried their own comfort. Riven would sit on the couch with his tie halfway loosened, and Cala would stretch beside him with her legs tucked under a blanket. Sometimes he talked about a complex deal or a renovation project that frustrated him. Other times they didn't speak at all. She rested her head on his arm, and the quiet gave him room to breathe. Their home wasn't filled with noise. It was filled with presence. They both valued that. Weekends were simple. A walk through the small park near their building. A slow breakfast at a local cafe where no one knew Riven was a rising figure in real estate. They enjoyed being ordinary together. When work stress piled up, Cala often reached for his hand, grounding him with the calm she carried so naturally. He once told her that being with her felt like stepping into a room where everything was already in place. There were no grand displays of affection, but there were plenty of small actions that held meaning. Riven fixed the loose cabinet handle she struggled with. Cala organized his workspace before a big presentation because she knew clutter distracted him. He brought her small pastries from a bakery she loved. She pressed her cheek to his chest every evening before bed. These habits made their marriage feel lived in, safe, and honest. At least, that was how everything felt before the shift began. Their love never needed loud declarations. It developed through moments that didn't seem significant at first, but carried weight the more they shared them. Riven had a quiet way of showing affection. He listened closely, even when he seemed tired. If Cala mentioned something she liked, he remembered it. If she hinted at worry, he noticed a change in her tone before she admitted anything. Cala appreciated that level of awareness. It made her feel valued, not judged. When she first moved into his condo after their wedding, he had already cleared a shelf for her books and placed a small plant by the window because he knew she liked greenery. She didn't ask him to do that. He simply anticipated her comfort. That was his way of saying he wanted her to belong there. Cala gave affection through presence. She didn't hover or pry. She offered support without forcing conversations. If Riven came home late, she waited for him with a warm meal. If he seemed stressed, she drew a bath or dimmed the lights so he could ease into the night without pressure. He once told her that she supported him better than he supported himself. Their interactions came from a place of quiet understanding. She touched his arm in passing. He kissed her forehead when she walked by, and these gestures built their connection more than long speeches ever could. Cala often thought their marriage worked because neither of them tried to change the other. She respected his focus. He respected her calm nature. Friends described them as a balanced pair. Riven had sharp edges from the demands of his work. Cala softened those edges without losing herself. Their relationship felt like two people choosing each other again every day through consistent care. They planned a future based on steady growth. They talked about buying a home outside the city. They imagined raising children who inherited Cala's patience and Riven's discipline. They wanted a life shaped by intention rather than speed. Riven even started wrapping up his work earlier so he could have dinner with her more often. It showed he was trying to protect what they had. Those early years held the warmth of a partnership that felt genuine. But soft gestures weren't enough to shield them from the strain that entered their home through someone else. The shift began the moment Coraline Oliver decided she wanted to be closer to her son. She moved into a condo 10 minutes away and visited often, unannounced at first, then with the expectation that she had a place in their routine. Cala greeted her with patience, offering tea and keeping conversation light. But Coraline's eyes always scanned the home as if searching for flaws. She didn't raise her voice. Her criticisms came softly, which sometimes made them harder to challenge. She questioned Cala's work at the wellness center, calling it nice but not forward-moving. She commented on Cala's quiet nature, suggesting she lacked presence. She studied Cala's clothes with a lift of her brow. Nothing Cala did seemed acceptable in her eyes. Riven didn't see the early tension. His schedule kept him away, and Coraline behaved differently when he was in the room. She praised the meals Cala cooked and complimented her taste. The moment he stepped out or took a call, her tone shifted. She made pointed remarks about women who hold successful men back or wives who should aim higher. Cala swallowed those comments, choosing composure over confrontation. She believed peace was worth protecting, even if it cost her comfort. She thought Coraline would adjust with time. But instead, Coraline tested boundaries more boldly. She criticized the way Cala folded towels. She questioned why Cala didn't host larger gatherings. She told Riven privately that Cala didn't understand the demands of his position. He brushed it off, assuming his mother was simply adjusting to the change. Each visit left Cala with a quiet ache she hid well. She didn't want Riven to feel caught between them. She hoped patience would ease the strain. But Coraline's presence began to fill the space around them, and their once steady marriage started to carry a weight it had never known. Cala refused to match Coraline's energy with conflict. She didn't want to build a home where arguments defined the tone of their days. Instead, she chose patience. She responded to sharp remarks with quiet nods, stepped away from tense moments, and focused on supporting Riven when he came home drained from meetings. She kept peace in the house, even when it cost her emotional ease. When Coraline arrived unexpectedly, Cala welcomed her with a soft greeting. When Coraline critiqued her cooking, Cala served the meal anyway and excused herself to refill drinks. Her calm wasn't passiveness, it was self-control. She protected her sense of dignity by refusing to let hostility shape her responses. She tried to communicate gently with Riven. On nights when he returned home late, she attempted to mention Coraline's remarks without sounding accusatory. Riven, exhausted, often thought she was overthinking it. He assumed Coraline held harmless opinions. "She's adjusting," he would say. "Give her time." Cala tried. She tried harder than anyone saw. She filled her journal with thoughts she didn't speak aloud. She wrote about wanting a family where respect came naturally. She wrote about her hope that Coraline would soften if she continued showing kindness. She believed in patience because it aligned with who she was. But patience can carry a cost when the other party is not interested in peace. Cala found herself shrinking to keep the house calm. She avoided inviting friends over because Coraline often commented on the smallest details. She adjusted her routines, her tone, even her posture, all in the effort to avoid unnecessary tension. Still, she stayed gentle. She greeted Riven at the door, prepared meals, and curated moments that reminded them both of their early years. She wanted to preserve the connection they had built before outside pressure crept in. She loved Riven deeply, and she hoped love mixed with patience would be enough to steady their marriage. It took time for her to realize their balance was tilting in a direction she could not fix alone. Riven's workload increased as his projects expanded. Long meetings, late-night calls, and constant travel filled his calendar. He wasn't ignoring Cala on purpose. He believed he was building a future for both of them. He thought success would give them the security they needed to start the family they talked about. But success kept him away from home more often, and each hour he missed created room for misunderstandings. When he arrived home, he was drained. He didn't notice how Cala's shoulders tensed slightly when he mentioned his mother's visit. He didn't see how she paused before answering questions about her day. He trusted that she handled things the same way she handled most challenges, with grace and quiet endurance. He had no idea how often Coraline criticized Cala during his absence. He didn't know Cala wiped tears in the kitchen after specific remarks. He assumed silence meant everything was stable. He didn't realize silence sometimes signaled fatigue. Cala tried to speak in small pieces, but her gentle nature made her soften the truth. Riven often misread her calm as reassurance. After hearing Coraline speak fondly of Cala in his presence, he thought the tension was easing. He didn't grasp how different Coraline behaved when he wasn't in the room. His tunnel focus on work left him blind to the quiet shifts at home. He didn't see Cala adjusting her behavior. He didn't see the growing distance between his mother's expectations and Cala's comfort. He didn't see the emotional weight Cala carried each day. He believed love meant providing stability. He didn't realize Calla needed protection more than luxury. She needed him to notice the strain Coraline introduced. She needed him to stand beside her. That awareness would come later, but by then, the damage had already carved deep. Their days continued, but the warmth in their home began to thin. Calla still prepared meals and kept routines steady, yet a quiet heaviness settled beneath the surface. She woke earlier, not because she wanted extra time, but because she needed space to breathe before the day unfolded. Riven sensed she was tired, but chalked it up to work hours at the wellness center. Coraline increased her visits. She found reasons to drop by: a new business article she wanted Riven to read, a concern about his diet, a comment about how the house was arranged. Each visit left Calla feeling smaller, though she never lost her composure. She remained polite, even when Coraline spoke as if Calla didn't belong. Riven saw none of this clearly. He noticed tension but didn't trace its source. He believed things were temporary, yet he missed how Calla's eyes lingered on the door after Coraline left. He missed how she took deeper breaths before sitting at the dinner table. He missed how she paused before answering questions about her day. Their marriage wasn't falling apart aloud. It was shifting quietly. Just as Coraline's criticisms came in soft tones, the strain formed in soft changes. A pause too long. A smile that didn't reach the eyes. A silence meant to protect peace but carrying hurt. Calla loved Riven deeply, but she began to realize she was carrying most of the weight alone. She still hoped things would improve. She believed Riven would eventually notice the pressure she faced. But each day, without acknowledgement, made her heart grow more guarded. Life inside their home looked stable from the outside, but inside, the foundation was stretching thin. The choices they made next would determine whether their marriage held steady or cracked under the quiet tension shaping their days. Calla spent the late afternoon preparing dinner with quiet intention. She laid out fresh vegetables, seasoned the chicken the way Riven liked, and set the table with soft lighting to ease the long day he had come from. She moved through the kitchen with steady hands, grounding herself in each step. Cooking had always been her way of creating calm in the home, a small offering of peace after a demanding workday. She planned the evening carefully. Riven mentioned he wanted to share news about expanding his company into a new city. She wanted the space to feel warm when he spoke. She placed cloth napkins beside each plate and added a small bowl of lemons because she knew he liked the scent. These were details she tended to with care, hoping they built an atmosphere that welcomed conversation. As she stirred the pot on the stove, she replayed her hopes silently. Maybe tonight would feel like the early years again. Maybe they could talk without interruption. Maybe she could find a gentle way to bring up the pressure she felt from Coraline. Not as a complaint, as a bridge. She heard the front door open and felt a light pull of anticipation. Riven stepped inside, loosening his tie, looking tired but grateful to be home. He walked into the kitchen and leaned in to kiss her cheek. The small gesture still warmed her chest, even though tension had settled into their days. "You cooked," he said, noticing the aroma. "I wanted tonight to feel easy," she replied. Before they could settle into that softness, another sound followed, the click of heels. Coraline entered without knocking, carrying her purse as if she belonged there. Calla's shoulders tightened, but she kept her expression calm. "Dinner?" Coraline said, looking around the kitchen. "I hope it is something light. Riven has been eating far too heavily these days." Calla swallowed her sigh. Tonight was supposed to be peaceful. She hoped Coraline would simply observe, eat quietly, and leave early. But peace was not what Coraline brought with her. Coraline stepped closer to the dining table and examined it as if she were an inspector searching for faults. Her eyes scanned the plates, the arrangement, the spacing, and the napkins. She didn't comment at first, but the silence alone carried judgment. "You set the table with these napkins again," she said finally. "They wrinkled too easily. I thought we talked about choosing better fabrics." Calla kept her voice calm. "These are the ones Riven likes." Coraline clicked her tongue. Riven likes efficiency, not fussiness. Calla didn't correct her. She simply adjusted the water glasses. When Calla returned to the kitchen to retrieve the food, Coraline followed. The air shifted with each remark she made. "Chicken?" she questioned under her breath. "He needs more variety. A man in his position should eat meals that match his status." Calla kept stirring the pot. "He asked for something light tonight." Coraline ignored the response. "You spend too much time on these small routines. You should think bigger. Women who marry into families like ours must have broader vision." Calla's chest tightened, but she placed the bowl on the counter with steady hands. I'm doing my best. I'm sure you think you are. Coraline's tone softened in a way that felt sharper than a direct insult. Some women were made for quiet roles. It seems you are comfortable staying there. Riven entered briefly, unaware of the tension. Smells good in here, he said before returning to the dining room to prepare for his announcement. The moment he stepped out, Coraline tilted her head and delivered another blow. You should polish your posture. It looks uncertain. Calla inhaled slowly. She pinched the serving spoon between her fingers to keep her hands steady. Tonight was supposed to be gentle. Tonight was supposed to remind Riven of the warmth they once shared. Instead, Coraline's presence felt like a shadow over every small kindness Calla attempted. Still, she refused to respond with anger. She continued preparing the plates, hoping the evening would shift soon. But Coraline wasn't finished. Riven sat at the dining table reviewing his notes for the expansion announcement. His mind was split between excitement and exhaustion. He'd been working toward this deal for months, and tonight he planned to share his progress with Calla. He didn't notice Coraline's tone growing sharper, nor Calla's posture becoming stiffer. To him, the atmosphere felt normal, quiet, steady, familiar. He heard their voices in the kitchen but didn't register the undertone. He assumed they were discussing the meal or simple details. His focus was on the opportunity ahead. He imagined Calla's encouraging smile when he shared the news. She always made big decisions feel lighter. When the food arrived, he looked up with appreciation. Thank you, he said, noticing the effort on the table. Calla smiled softly. Coraline sat across from them, wearing a tight expression. He began talking through the expansion details. We finalized the first stage, he said. If everything goes well, we can open the new branch by next spring. Calla listened closely, her eyes warm. That's wonderful, she said. Coraline cut in quietly. It's a bold move but risky if you don't have strong support at home. Riven glanced at her but didn't sense the deeper meaning. I have support, he said, assuming she was referring to the strain of business. Calla's fingers tightened around her fork, but she stayed composed. Coraline continued. Big transitions demand partners who elevate you, not partners who stay small. Riven's thoughts slipped back to his expansion plan. He didn't parse the implication. He didn't notice the slight quiver in Calla's breath. He took another bite and said, It's manageable. I'll handle it. Calla lowered her gaze to her plate. She didn't want him to see the flicker of hurt in her eyes. Riven remained focused on his notes, not the tension building around him. He didn't see how hard Calla worked to keep the evening gentle. He didn't see how Coraline's remarks chipped away at her peace. His distraction wasn't malicious. It was habitual. He thought silence meant comfort. He didn't realize silence was thinning the room, piece by piece. Calla breathed through each remark Coraline delivered, hoping the meal would move toward calmer ground. She kept responding in soft tones, steering the conversation away from tension. She asked Riven about his travel plans, offered him more vegetables, and tried to shift focus back to his announcement. But Coraline had no intention of letting the evening settle. Every gesture Calla made became an opening for criticism. You serve too quickly, Coraline said. A proper hostess moves with structure. You sit too softly, she added moments later. Confidence matters. You answer too quietly, she whispered. People overlook women who lack presence. Calla absorbed each comment. She kept her breathing slow, her hands steady, her tone measured. She refused to let Coraline pull her into conflict. A heated exchange would only give Coraline more room to twist the narrative. Calmness was her shield. Calla prepared everything herself, Riven said finally, noticing the effort she put into the evening. It's been a long day for her. Coraline raised her eyebrows. Oh, I can see that. Calla recognized the hidden meaning, but she chose not to react. She focused on the warmth of the food, the soft lighting she said earlier, and the hope that the night would pass without escalation. She reminded herself of the life she wanted, one where peace shaped their home. She had spent years nurturing that environment. She wasn't ready to let one evening dismantle it. But Coraline read Calla's restraint as weakness. Each time Calla stepped back, Coraline stepped forward. Each time Calla swallowed discomfort, Coraline amplified her remarks. Calla sensed the shift, yet she continued choosing dignity over confrontation. Riven noticed the pauses, the slight drop in Calla's shoulders, but he didn't connect them to Coraline's remarks. He assumed Calla was tired. He assumed the evening would smooth over soon. He didn't understand how close they were to a breaking point. The breaking point came quietly. Calla stepped into the kitchen to bring out the last dish. She breathed deeply before returning to the dining room, trying to reset her mood. When she entered with the plate, Coraline's eyes narrowed. "You know," Coraline began, her voice low, "women like you slow men like Riven down. You cling to small comforts and call it support. But men with vision need partners who push them forward, not partners who hide behind gentleness." Calla paused. She let the words settle inside her, weighing if a response would help or worsen the moment. Coraline stood. "Riven deserves someone stronger, someone who matches his ambition. You live in the shadow of his potential, and you don't even try to rise." Riven froze halfway through a sentence. "Mother." Coraline stepped closer to Calla, her eyes sharp with disapproval. "You were never fit for this family. You hold him back." Calla steadied her breathing. She kept her voice composed. "I have supported him in every way I know." Coraline scoffed. "Support? You drain him. You limit him. You do nothing but—" The slap landed before the sentence finished. A sharp sound cracked through the room. Calla's head turned with the force. The sting shot through her cheek, but the deeper pain settled somewhere else, somewhere heavier. She touched her face with slow fingers, steady even in hurt. Riven stood abruptly, stunned. "Mother." Coraline stepped back, breathing hard, as if she had proven a point. Calla stayed silent, not out of fear, out of clarity. Everything shifted in that single moment. Riven's heart pounded as he stepped forward, unsure of what to do first. His mother's hand still hovered slightly in the air, as if the echo of the slap lingered there. Calla looked at him, waiting, quiet, steady, wounded. For a second, he froze. He shouldn't have. Calla didn't deserve hesitation, but the shock stalled him. He opened his mouth, searching for the right words, but nothing formed quickly enough. He reached toward Calla, then pulled his hand back, unsure if touching her would help or make the moment harder for her. Coraline's voice cut through the silence. She needed to hear the truth. Riven flinched. His gaze darted between them, between the woman who raised him and the woman who had stood beside him through every long day and every quiet night. His chest tightened with conflict he had never faced so directly. Calla kept her palm against her cheek, not to soothe the sting, but to ground herself. She didn't cry. She didn't shout. She didn't retreat. She simply waited for Riven to speak. "Calla," he said finally, but the words were thin. His voice lacked the strength she needed in that moment. He looked at his mother, then at Calla, and the pause stretched too long. Calla lowered her hand. Her expression didn't break, but something inside her shifted. She realized she was standing alone in a moment she should never have faced alone. Riven finally stepped toward her, but the timing was already wrong. The damage had already spoken louder than any apology he attempted to form. His hesitation was not an attack. It was fear. It was shock. It was conflict. But it hurt more than the slap. Calla inhaled deeply and straightened her posture. The decision formed in her chest with calm certainty. She didn't need a scene. She didn't need raised voices or explanations that would lead nowhere. She walked around the table, heading toward the stairs with the same quiet strength she used to keep their marriage steady. Riven reached out weakly. "Calla, wait." She didn't stop. She climbed the stairs with a slow, measured pace, as if reclaiming each step of her dignity. She entered the bedroom, grabbed her small suitcase from the closet, and began packing only the essentials. A few folded clothes, her journal, her toiletries, nothing more. She wasn't running. She was leaving with intention. Downstairs, Riven's footsteps echoed with hesitation. He lingered at the bottom of the stairs, torn between confronting his mother and following his wife. He chose the latter, but he moved too slowly. When Calla descended with her suitcase, the room felt colder. Riven tried again. "Let's talk, please." Calla paused in front of him. Her voice was steady, clear. "I'm leaving tonight." "Calla." He reached toward her suitcase, then stopped himself again. She tightened her grip. "I can't stay in a home where disrespect goes unanswered." Riven exhaled sharply. "I didn't want this. I didn't expect—" "I know," she said gently, "but your silence says more than words." Her calmness cut deeper than anger ever could. She didn't accuse him. She didn't blame him. She simply stated the truth she had lived with for too long. Coraline watched from across the room, her expression unreadable. Calla walked toward the door. She didn't slam it. She didn't look back. She stepped into the night with a quiet dignity that came from knowing her worth. When the door closed behind Calla, the sound settled into Riven's chest like a weight he didn't know how to lift. Anger would have been loud. Anger would have invited a fight he might have tried to fix in the moment. But Calla didn't leave in anger. She left in certainty. And certainty is final in a way shouting never is. Riven stood still, his mind replaying the last few minutes. He heard the slap again. He saw the calm in Calla's eyes. He felt the gap between them widen because he didn't speak when it mattered most. Silence had been his default for years, during long work nights, during small misunderstandings, during the early signs of strain. He thought silence kept peace. He thought silence softened conflict. Tonight proved the opposite. Silence can wound deeper than harsh words. Silence can break trust without sound. Silence can make the person you love feel unprotected. Calla walked away because she no longer trusted his quiet. She needed support shown in action, not assumed through intention. She needed a partner who stood with her in moments that demanded strength. Riven sank into the nearest chair, covering his face with his hands. His mother's presence felt distant now. The only thing he could feel was the absence of the woman who had held their marriage together with patience he didn't fully appreciate. He whispered one sentence into the quiet room. I should have spoken. It was too late to call her back. It was too late to rewrite the moment. And it was the night that changed the rest of his life. Calla stepped out of the house that night with calm steps, not rushed, not shaken, simply resolved. She walked toward the quiet street, suitcase rolling softly behind her. Her heart carried weight, but her spirit stayed steady. She didn't stumble or pause at the doorway. She didn't wait for Riven to call her back. She already knew he wouldn't find the right words fast enough. She had waited long enough for him to speak up, and he had never done it when it mattered. Her dignity became her shield. She didn't crumble under the pain of the slap. She didn't let humiliation define her. She held her head steady and embraced the truth she had been avoiding. For months, the home she tried to protect no longer protected her. The air outside felt different, open, quiet, and strangely comforting. For the first time in years, she felt space around her. She felt room to breathe without shrinking under someone else's judgment. She didn't know what direction she would take next, but she knew staying was no longer an option. She took a cab to a modest hotel on the other side of the city. She checked in using her maiden name, avoiding unnecessary questions. Once inside the small room, she sat on the edge of the bed, placed her suitcase on the floor, and allowed herself one deep breath, a release of everything she carried from the past few years. She didn't cry. She didn't tremble. She simply accepted the moment for what it was, the beginning of a new chapter she didn't plan for but was ready to face. As night settled outside the window, she looked out at the dim lights of the city and whispered a truth only she needed to hear. I deserve peace. It wasn't bitterness. It wasn't spite. It was clarity, and clarity is what carried her into the next morning, ready to rebuild her life with whatever strength she had left. 2 weeks after leaving, Calla noticed small changes in her body, fatigue she couldn't explain, morning nausea that came in gentle waves, and a tenderness in her chest that made her pause. She brushed it off at first, thinking stress was catching up to her, but the symptoms persisted, and one quiet evening, she bought a pregnancy test from a nearby pharmacy. She returned to her small room, sat down slowly, and took the test with steady hands. Minutes later, the result appeared, clear and undeniable. Positive. A soft stillness filled the room. She stared at the result without panic and without joy, just a deep, grounded awareness. She placed a hand on her stomach, letting the truth settle inside her. She was carrying something precious, something new, something untouched by conflict. A tear slid down her cheek, not from sadness, but from the mix of surprise and acceptance. She whispered into the quiet, You're here, and I'm here too. She knew immediately that returning to Riven wasn't an option. Her child, her children, though she didn't know their number yet, deserved a life free from harmful remarks, tense meals, and unspoken pain. They deserved a mother who could breathe without walking on edge. And Calla deserved a chance to raise them with peace instead of correction. She visited a clinic the next day. The gentle hum of the ultrasound machine filled the room as the technician moved the wand across her abdomen. Calla watched the screen, expecting to see one small flicker of life. But there were two tiny heartbeats, two small beginnings, two lives growing inside her. Her lips parted in quiet shock. The technician smiled and said, "Twins." Calla pressed a hand over her mouth, absorbing the news. 2 children, 2 lights she would protect with every ounce of strength she possessed. She walked out of the clinic with a new sense of purpose. She didn't know what the future would look like, but she knew she would shape it with intention. These children would know love, safety, and calm. They would grow up without the weight she once carried. Calla sat in her small room that evening, the ultrasound photos on her lap. 2 tiny silhouettes, 2 new beginnings. She stared at them with a soft focus, feeling both steady and overwhelmed. Raising twins alone would not be easy. She had no illusions about the challenges ahead, but she also knew something else. Bringing them back into the environment she left would harm them before they ever learned to speak. Coraline's sharp tone, her controlling nature, her belief that Calla was never enough. Those things weren't meant for children, especially children who deserved warmth and freedom. Calla held the photos tighter. "You deserve better," she whispered. Peace became her guiding principle. Not comfort, not convenience, peace. She wanted her children to grow up without hearing comments that made them question their worth. She wanted them to see love in action, not stress masked with forced smiles. She wanted a home that felt like breath instead of tension. She listed her priorities with clarity: a quiet environment, a job she could manage while pregnant, a new location far from the past, a plan for stability once the babies arrived. She didn't hesitate. She didn't wonder whether Riven would eventually change. She didn't consider telling him immediately. She believed children deserved to grow inside a space where the mother felt safe. She couldn't give them that if she lived near Coraline. She also knew Riven's loyalty to his mother ran deep. She didn't hate him for it. She simply understood it. He would never choose conflict with Coraline unless he learned what it meant to lose something important. Calla placed the ultrasound photos inside her journal and closed it gently. She didn't feel anger toward Riven. She felt disappointment, yes, but not bitterness. He was a man who didn't speak fast enough. A man who didn't understand the cost of silence until it was too late. She decided that night these children would be raised in peace, even if it meant starting from zero. It was the strongest choice she had ever made. Calla chose Portland because it offered a slower pace, access to nature, and enough distance from her old life to build something new. She searched for small rentals online, focusing on areas that felt calm and family-friendly. She wanted a place with trees, quiet streets, and a sense of community, not luxury or grandeur, just peace. She found a modest apartment in a neighborhood lined with small shops, local cafes, and parks that echoed with laughter. It wasn't extravagant, but it felt warm. The landlord was a gentle man who didn't ask intrusive questions. When she signed the lease, she felt a sense of ownership over her future for the first time in years. Packing was simple. She didn't have many belongings, but she carried her essentials with intention. Her books, her comfortable clothing, her notebooks, and the ultrasound pictures placed carefully in a folder. The bus ride to Portland was long, but the movement soothed her. She watched the landscape shift, letting the miles create emotional distance from everything she left behind. Every hour that passed made her heart feel lighter. When she arrived, the air smelled of rain and pine. She breathed in deeply, grounding herself in the new beginning. Her apartment was small but filled with light. As she walked from room to room, she imagined setting up spaces for the twins. Cradles by the window, soft blankets, toys that made gentle sounds. She visited a local clinic to establish prenatal care, and the staff treated her with respect. No judgment, no pressure, just support. She felt her shoulders ease in a way she hadn't experienced in a long time. She found a small grocery store nearby and bought simple meals. The cashier smiled at her, and she felt seen, not as someone's wife or daughter-in-law, but as a person building her own life. The first night in Portland, she sat by the window with a cup of warm tea. She placed her hand on her belly and whispered, "We're safe." It was a beginning she didn't plan, but it was the beginning she needed. Calla applied for a part-time position at a local wellness center. She had experience from her previous job, and the environment aligned with her gentle nature. The center focused on helping clients improve posture, flexibility, and mindful movement. The manager, a kind woman named Talia, immediately sensed Calla's calm presence and hired her after one interview. Work became a source of healing. The center was filled with soft music, warm lighting, and steady routines. Calla taught stretch classes, guided breathing sessions, and helped clients release tension through simple exercises. Her voice carried a soothing tone that people responded to. She never spoke about her past. She didn't tell anyone about her former life, her marriage, or the slap that changed her path. She kept her focus on the present. When she moved through the studio, people felt grounded just by being near her. Her pregnancy progressed smoothly, and the staff supported her without making her feel fragile. They let her adjust her hours as needed. They brought her healthy snacks. They reminded her to rest when she pushed herself too hard. The income wasn't large, but it was enough. She learned to budget carefully, prioritizing savings for the twins and basic necessities. She didn't miss luxury. She didn't miss the high-end dinners or events she once attended with Riven. Peace mattered more. Every day she left the center feeling fulfilled. She helped people release stress, and unknowingly, they helped her release lingering hurt. She felt present, stable, and capable. The Wellness Center became part of her foundation, a place where she rediscovered confidence. She returned home after each shift with soft steps and a clearer mind. She cooked simple meals, wrote in her journal, and planned for the twins' arrival. She wasn't lonely. Her days were quiet but meaningful. For the first time in a very long time, Calla felt like she belonged somewhere. The months passed, and Calla prepared for the birth of her twins with a determination she didn't know she possessed. She attended prenatal classes, read books on twin development, and practiced breathing techniques she learned at the Wellness Center. She set aside money for hospital fees, baby supplies, and essentials. Everything she did carried purpose. People at the Wellness Center offered small acts of kindness. A coworker gave her gently used baby clothes. Another gifted her a pair of soft blankets. Talia surprised her with a baby carrier. Calla accepted each gesture with quiet gratitude. She set up a small nursery in her apartment. 2 cribs, soft sheets, a mobile with wooden stars that turned slowly in the air. She arranged diapers and bottles on a shelf, labeling everything to stay organized. She placed a rocking chair in the corner, imagining the nights she would spend soothing the babies to sleep. Even though she prepared alone, she didn't feel broken. She felt purposeful. She understood that raising twins would require patience, strength, and focus, and she was ready. Her body changed daily, but her confidence grew with it. There were moments of fatigue, moments where her back ached or where fear crept in, but she met each moment with calm resolve. She didn't crumble. She didn't regret her choice. She believed deeply that her children were entering a home filled with love, not conflict. When the day of delivery came, she moved through the hospital hallways with slow, measured breaths. The labor was long, but she endured it with quiet strength. When the twins finally arrived, Lauren first, Caleb second, Calla held them against her chest and whispered their names with tenderness. Tears fell then, but they were tears of relief, not pain. She looked at their tiny faces, their small hands, their blinking eyes, and felt a love deeper than anything she had known. She wasn't broken. She was becoming. Calla's days quickly shaped themselves around the twins' needs. She developed routines that kept the home steady: morning feeding, midday naps, evening baths, and soft lullabies before bed. She spoke to them constantly, not in baby talk, but in calm sentences that made them feel safe. When Lauren cried, she hummed quietly and rocked her. When Caleb grew restless, she held him close and let her heartbeat soothe him. She learned their cues, their small signals, their unique ways of expressing discomfort and joy. She stayed patient even during long nights. The Wellness Center adjusted her schedule after maternity leave, allowing her to return part-time. She brought the twins on some days when she taught gentle classes. Clients adored them. They slept peacefully in their carriers, surrounded by calm voices and warm surroundings. Calla chose stability over speed. She moved through her days without rushing. She believed children needed consistency more than perfection. She kept the home organized, meals simple, and schedules predictable. She wanted the twins to grow up in an environment that felt safe from every angle. She taught them early about kindness. She modeled it through her tone, her actions, and the care she extended to others. When they reached toddlerhood, she encouraged sharing, gentle touch, and expressing emotions with clarity. Her life was busy, yes, but fulfilling. She didn't envy her old world. She didn't miss the sharp remarks or long nights waiting for Riven to come home. She didn't miss explaining herself. Her new life carried softness she once fought to create. Kala kept family journals documenting milestones, small victories, and funny moments. These journals became her treasure. They reminded her of how far she had come and how she built a peaceful home with her own hands. By the time the twins turned 4, their personalities blossomed in clear, beautiful ways. Lauren took after Kala, calm, observant, thoughtful. She liked drawing houses and trees, often filling her papers with wide windows and soft colors. She processed the world quietly, taking her time before speaking. Caleb, on the other hand, showed signs of curiosity and problem-solving from an early age. He enjoyed taking apart small toys and putting them back together. He asked questions constantly, simple ones, deep ones, practical ones. His mind stayed active from morning until night. Kala watched them grow with pride. She saw Riven in them, his focus, his sharp eyes, his analytical ways. But she also saw herself in their tenderness. Their balance reflected the best of both parents, even though they only knew one. Lauren often leaned against Kala during story time. Caleb liked sitting on the floor, surrounded by toy pieces he arranged with precision. They shared a strong bond, communicating through small gestures, a tug of a sleeve, a shared pencil, a soft giggle that made the other join in. Kala taught them emotional awareness early. She encouraged them to speak about feelings, offering them words when they struggled. "It's okay to be upset," she would say, "but let's understand why." The twins grew into children who listened, cared, and understood gentleness without being passive. They respected others. They respected boundaries. They gave affection freely because they received it freely. Kala often wondered what Riven would think if he saw them. She didn't imagine confrontation or regret. She simply wondered if he would recognize the parts of him that lived in them. She sometimes traced the line of Caleb's eyebrow or adjusted Lauren's hair and felt memories touch her lightly. Not painful, just present. Their personalities gave her joy that filled her entire home. Their laughter replaced any remnants of old wounds. Their curiosity made each day feel new. Watching them grow strengthened Kala in ways she didn't expect. She realized she wasn't surviving. She was thriving. Kala's life in Portland wasn't grand, but it was rich in ways that mattered. She lived in a modest townhouse she moved into once her savings allowed. The rooms were simple, but they carried warmth. Morning sunlight touched the walls gently. The twins' drawings decorated the fridge. The sound of their play filled the house with life. She didn't own luxury furniture or designer clothes. She didn't attend high-end events or formal dinners, but she didn't miss any of that. Her joy came from small things, watching the twins run through the park, cooking simple meals together, reading bedtime stories under soft light. She budgeted tightly, but wisely. She bought second-hand toys, shopped at local farmers markets, and chose experiences over excess. The twins didn't feel lack. They felt love. Kala continued working at the wellness center, now teaching more classes as the twins grew more independent. She built a reputation for her calming presence and warm guidance. Clients trusted her. Some confided in her. She helped them through stress, just as the center once helped her through her own. Her home became a haven. Friends visited and admired the energy inside the townhouse. Quiet, steady, welcoming. They often said, "Your place feels peaceful." Kala always smiled, knowing she built that peace intentionally. She also saved carefully for the twins' future. She wanted them to have choices. She wanted them to grow with confidence and security. Her life was simple, but it was stable, and that stability shaped everything she did. There were moments she sat on the porch in the evening, watching the twins chase bubbles or chalk shapes onto the sidewalk. She would hold a warm cup of tea and breathe deeply, grateful for the life she created after so much loss. Kala never regretted leaving. She never regretted choosing peace. Her joy didn't need riches. It needed space, intention, and love. And in Portland, she found all three. The moment Kala stepped out of the house, Riven felt something inside him collapse. Her absence hit harder than he expected. He stood in the living room, staring at the door she closed behind her, feeling as if the air had been pulled out of the space. The silence that followed wasn't peaceful. It was heavy, suffocating, and sharp in a way it had never been before. He replayed the last minutes in his mind, the slap, Kala's steady posture, his mother's harsh words, and his own delay. That delay stung him more than any criticism anyone had ever thrown his way. He had frozen. He had failed to protect her. He had failed to defend their marriage. He never imagined himself capable of hurting her, but in that moment, he had become part of the pain she endured. He walked through the house with slow, hollow steps. Every room carried Cala's presence, her small touches, her quiet routines, her gentle influence. Her folded blanket on the couch, her tea mug on the counter, her book beside the sofa. These items no longer felt ordinary. They felt like reminders of everything he had taken for granted. Riven sat at the edge of their bed, the place where they once found comfort in each other, and lowered his head into his hands. Regret swelled inside him with a force he wasn't ready for. He had spent years making rational decisions in business, always seeing problems before they formed, always moving with intention. But in his personal life, where it mattered most, he had failed to act when action was needed. He whispered into the empty room, "I should have spoken." The words were barely audible, but they carried the truth he could no longer ignore. The house felt different without Cala. Every room held a stillness that didn't exist before. Riven walked through the hallway, touching the walls, the furniture, the spaces she used to fill. He didn't know where to direct his remorse, so he spoke aloud to the empty living room. "I'm sorry," he said quietly. "I didn't protect you." His words disappeared into the air without response. He continued anyway, as though the home itself deserved to hear the apology. "You didn't deserve that. You didn't deserve any of it." He moved to the dining table, the place where the rupture took place. He pulled out the chair she always used and sat down. The memory of the slap replayed sharply, and he felt the sting as if it landed on him. He placed his hand on the table as if reaching for her fingers across it, something he used to do when they shared meals. He whispered again, "You deserved better from me." He walked toward the kitchen, opening cabinets she organized, seeing the arrangement she created to make their home function smoothly. Her attention to detail became another reminder of how much care she poured into their life together. He leaned against the counter, eyes closing as he breathed through the ache building in his chest. He went upstairs to their bedroom. When he entered, he noticed her pillows still carried the faint scent of her lavender oil. He sat on the bed and felt tears collect in his eyes, a rare occurrence for a man who rarely showed emotion. He covered his face and let the weight of his choices sink in. "I'm sorry," he repeated, softer this time, as though speaking directly to her. "I hope you know that." He didn't know whether she would ever hear those words. He didn't know if apologies mattered anymore, but saying them was the only thing he could give to the silence she left behind. The following weeks forced Riven to confront the truth he had ignored for too long. Silence wasn't neutral. Silence was a choice. Silence had consequences. He began to see how many moments he had let pass without speaking, how many times. Cala had tried to express discomfort in subtle ways he never took seriously. He remembered evenings when she hesitated before telling him about another tense encounter with his mother. He remembered mornings when she took deeper breaths than usual, moments he dismissed as tiredness. He remembered how she used to smooth her dress nervously when Coraline walked into the room. These signs were not small. They were calls for support, and he had missed them. He also recalled moments when he could have spoken up. After Coraline criticized her posture, her cooking, her voice, he could have defended her. He could have set boundaries. He could have reassured her that she mattered more than anyone else's expectations. Instead, he chose ease over confrontation, comfort over truth. Now, standing alone in their living room, he understood the real cost of that silence. Cala hadn't asked for much. She never demanded grand gestures or expensive displays. She wanted respect. She wanted a partner who stood beside her. She wanted acknowledgement when someone treated her unfairly. He had failed to give her that. As the days passed, he stopped sleeping well. He woke up in the middle of the night, replaying the moment she looked at him after. The slap, the disappointment in her eyes, the sadness behind her calm expression. That look stayed with him like a mark he couldn't erase. He realized silence didn't protect peace. It protected wrongdoing, and it left the person he loved feeling alone in moments where unity mattered. Understanding that truth changed him. Once Riven accepted that Cala wasn't coming back, he began searching for her. He hired a private investigator known for tracking people discreetly. He provided all the details he had, her maiden name, her last known workplace, her favorite places, her hometown. He thought the search would be straightforward. It wasn't. The investigator called after a week. "She's not using her old name," he said, "and there are no recent records under her married name either." Riven felt a tight pull in his chest. "Keep looking." They continued the search. Old colleagues, extended family, hospitals, rental agencies. No one knew where she had gone. She changed her number. She closed old accounts. She removed herself from every directory. It was as if she wanted a clean slate so complete that he wouldn't find her even by accident. He began checking places they once visited together, parks, cafes, small shops. There was no trace of her. He walked through areas she liked, hoping instinct would lead him somewhere, but nothing appeared. Months passed. Each update from the investigator carried the same theme. She stayed hidden because she wanted peace. Maybe she doesn't want to be found, the investigator said gently once. Riven closed his eyes, accepting a truth he didn't want to face. Calla didn't disappear. She protected herself from the pain she carried. He had lost her because he didn't speak when she needed him. And now, even with resources and effort, he couldn't reach her. The search stretched into years. After the first year, he realized something important. Calla didn't vanish due to fear. She vanished due to clarity. She valued peace, and she didn't trust him to protect it. During the search, Riven confronted his mother. He needed answers. He needed accountability. He needed her to understand the impact of her actions. He visited her home one afternoon. Coraline greeted him with her usual composed expression. "You look tired," she said, as if everything was normal. "We need to talk," he replied, stepping inside. She sat on her sofa, crossing her legs. "About what?" "About that night," he said sharply. "About what you did to Calla." Coraline stiffened slightly. "I didn't do anything out of line." "You slapped her," he said, disbelief rising in his voice. "You insulted her. You made her feel unwelcome in her own home." Coraline's expression didn't shift. "I said what needed to be said. She was not suited for you." Riven clenched his jaw. "It wasn't your place to decide that." "She was holding you back," Coraline said calmly. "I was looking out for your future." Riven stared at her, seeing her differently now. "My future is empty without her." Coraline waved her hand dismissively. "She'll return. Women like her always return." "She's gone," he said firmly. "And she's not coming back." Coraline blinked but didn't show remorse. "You're exaggerating." Riven stood. "You hurt her, and I let it happen." Coraline's voice sharpened. If she left so easily, she wasn't committed. Riven felt his chest tighten. "She left because of me. Because I didn't protect her. Because I stayed silent." Coraline didn't respond. She looked away, refusing to accept responsibility. Riven walked toward the door, realizing something crucial. His mother wouldn't change. His mother wouldn't apologize. His mother wouldn't understand the weight of her actions. He left her house with a deeper understanding of why Calla stayed away. Riven returned to an empty home every night. At first, the silence felt jarring. Then it became familiar. Then it became painful. He wandered through the house with a heaviness he couldn't shake. He sat on the couch where Calla once curled beside him. He stood in the kitchen where she prepared meals with care. He lingered in the hallway where he used to kiss her forehead in passing. Everything reminded him of her, yet nothing brought comfort. He stopped using the dining table. The memory of the slap hung in the air, and he couldn't sit there without feeling guilt. He ate standing in the kitchen or not at all. Sleep became difficult. He woke at random hours, thinking he heard her voice, only to remember she was gone. He would walk to the bedroom doorway and stare at the empty space where her suitcase had once been. The absence felt colder than any winter he had lived through. Work didn't distract him the way he hoped. He found himself staring at spreadsheets without reading them. He attended meetings with a numb expression. His employees noticed the shift but didn't ask questions. He tried reading books, watching movies, exercising, anything to dull the ache. Nothing helped. The silence in the house pressed against him from every angle. Some nights, he sat at her side of the bed, slipping his hand across the blanket as if trying to feel her warmth. In those moments, he whispered apologies into the air, unsure if they mattered to anyone but himself. His home, once steady and calm, now felt empty because the person who filled it with heart had walked away. The silence that he once thought protected him now swallowed him whole. No matter how much time passed, Riven couldn't escape the image of Calla's face after the slap. The sting on her cheek, the controlled breath, the disappointment in her eyes, those details replayed endlessly in his mind. But the worst part wasn't the slap itself. It was his hesitation, the moment she looked at him, waiting for him to speak, waiting for him to defend her, waiting for him to choose her. The moment he failed to act, that was the memory that carved itself into him. He replayed it during meetings, during meals, during the quiet hours when sleep wouldn't come. He wondered what would have happened if he had stepped forward the second Coraline raised her hand. If he had taken Calla's side without pause. If he had removed his mother from the house and embraced his wife. If he had spoken love instead of silence, he imagined a different outcome, one where Calla stayed, one where they healed together, one where he became the husband she deserved. But imagining didn't change the truth. He failed her in the one moment she needed him most. He learned something he never acknowledged before. Silence can be a betrayal when it replaces action. That realization stayed with him. It followed him everywhere. It shaped every decision he made in the years that followed. It became the lesson he carried quietly as he rebuilt himself. Every night he whispered the same sentence into the darkness. I should have spoken, but regret couldn't undo the past. And regret couldn't bring Calla home. Riven knew change didn't happen through guilt alone. He needed to confront his flaws and reshape the parts of himself that failed Calla. He began therapy, something he never considered before. He learned how often he avoided emotional confrontation. He learned how silence became his shield, how it created distance instead of peace. He started practicing direct communication, expressing frustration when it arose, addressing issues instead of ignoring them. It felt unnatural at first, but he pushed through. He didn't want to be the man who failed someone he loved ever again. He also adjusted his relationship with work. He reduced late nights and delegated tasks more efficiently. He realized he had used work as a way to avoid deeper emotional conversations. He used success as proof of love instead of speaking the words or showing up in meaningful ways. He set boundaries with his mother. Their relationship shifted dramatically. He stopped accepting her unsolicited comments with polite silence. He confronted her calmly when she crossed lines. She didn't appreciate this version of him, but he didn't let that sway him. He also became more present with people around him, co-workers, friends, employees. He listened more. He spoke honestly. He apologized when he hurt someone unintentionally. Small changes built larger habits. Years passed, and Riven slowly shaped himself into someone more aware, more accountable, more emotionally available. But none of his progress erased the longing he carried for Calla. Every improvement reminded him of the marriage he lost. He didn't pursue new relationships, not because nobody approached him, but because he wasn't ready. His heart remained tied to the woman who taught him the cost of silence. He valued her too much to replace her. He lived in hope, not active hope of finding her, but quiet hope that she was happy and at peace. Over time, Riven's grief didn't disappear. It transformed. It became a steady reminder instead of an overwhelming ache. He matured through it. He learned to carry the memory of Calla with respect instead of regret alone. He used what he lost to guide how he lived. He became more thoughtful in his actions, more intentional in his words, more aware of how small choices shape relationships. He grew into someone who recognized the value of emotional presence. He stopped seeing love as something maintained through routine. He started seeing love as something maintained through courage to speak, to protect, to apologize, to stand firm in moments that matter. His home changed. He redecorated, removing items tied to the tension of the past. He opened windows more. He cooked meals instead of ordering out. He created a space that reflected who he was becoming, not who he had been. He revisited journals Calla kept in the house, reading notes she left behind, grocery lists, reminders, simple thoughts scribbled in margins. Each note reminded him of her gentle spirit. Each note reminded him of what his hesitation cost him. But maturity softened the grief. He no longer searched every crowd for her face. He no longer hoped she might walk through the door. Instead, he hoped she had found the life she deserved, a life filled with the peace she sought the night she left. He didn't know she had given birth to twins. He didn't know 2 small children carried his eyes and her calm nature. He didn't know his future would shift again in ways he never expected. He simply lived each day with quiet accountability, shaped by the loss of the woman he once called his wife. The community center buzzed with light chatter and the soft rustling of art supplies as families gathered for the weekend kids event. Bright tables lined the room, covered with crayons, pencils, markers, and stacks of paper waiting for small hands to bring them to life. Volunteers set out paint cups, and parents helped their children settle into seats. The building had recently been renovated, and today was the first time the public saw the updated space. Wide hallways, fresh flooring, and brighter lighting made the center feel welcoming. Staff moved around, preparing for the arrival of their special guest, the real estate leader behind the renovation project. Calla walked in holding her twins' hands. Lauren and Caleb immediately released her fingers and raced toward the nearest table, eager to begin. She followed them with a soft smile, greeting a few familiar faces from her neighborhood. She placed a small cup of water beside their spot for painting and helped them roll their sleeves. The event felt warm, the kind of environment she wanted her children to grow up in, simple, community-oriented, and filled with easy laughter. She appreciated spaces where no one looked at her with suspicion or expectation. Here she was known only as a kind mother who lived nearby and participated in local activities. Meanwhile, across the room, staff members prepared for Riven's arrival. He was scheduled to do a brief interview and tour the center. He wasn't expecting anything unusual today. He came for the project, for the community, for the chance to see what his company's work had accomplished. He walked through the entrance moments later, accompanied by his assistant. He wore a simple suit, not overly formal but polished enough for the occasion. He began speaking to the director of the center, asking about attendance numbers, programs, and future plans. His tone remained steady, business-focused. He had no idea that a piece of his past, one he thought he had lost forever, was sitting just a few steps away, coloring at a small table with crayons under warm lights, in a room he helped rebuild without knowing what waited for him inside. Lauren and Caleb settled quickly at their table, each grabbing paper and crayons with excited hands. They loved art days. Lauren always chose soft, peaceful colors first, light blues, warm greens, gentle yellows. Caleb preferred bold strokes, pressing the crayons too hard at first and then adjusting once he found the right pressure. Their laughter blended with the sounds of other children. Lauren giggled when Caleb tried to draw a house and accidentally made the roof too large. Caleb tried again, sticking his tongue out in concentration, and Lauren leaned over to offer a suggestion. Their sibling bond was strong and unspoken. They didn't need to talk much to understand each other. Lauren nudged Caleb gently when his frustration rose. Caleb slid an extra crayon toward her when he felt she needed it. They worked side by side, mirroring each other's small movements. Calla observed them from a short distance, her heart full. These were the moments she cherished, when the twins were simply children, unburdened by the complexity of the past. They didn't know the story behind their last name. They didn't know why she made the choices she made. They didn't need to, not yet. A volunteer walked by and complimented their drawings. Caleb beamed. Lauren gave a shy smile. Their joy filled the room with a softness that drew the attention of anyone nearby. 2 tables away, a man paused mid-sentence without realizing why. He wasn't close enough to see their faces clearly, but the sound, their laughter, their tone, the rhythm of their voices, made something inside him still. He tilted his head slightly, listening in a way he didn't fully understand yet. The twins continued drawing, unaware that their joyful sounds were reaching the ears of someone whose entire world was about to shift. Riven was reviewing renovation notes with the center's director when he heard the faint echoes of laughter that pulled his attention away. It wasn't unusual for children to make noise during events like this. But something about this specific sound struck him differently. It felt familiar. It carried a tone he couldn't place, yet it tugged at him with quiet insistence. He paused mid-sentence. His assistant glanced at him, waiting for him to continue, but Riven's mind had already shifted. He turned his head toward the tables, scanning the room with curiosity. His heartbeat picked up, not out of fear but out of a strange recognition he couldn't explain. The laughter came again, soft and warm. He took a few steps closer, almost unconsciously. He didn't intend to walk toward the sound, yet his feet moved on their own. Something deep within him stirred, as if memory tugged at a thread he didn't know was still connected. The director followed his gaze. "The kids seem to be enjoying themselves," she said lightly. Riven nodded slowly, but didn't respond verbally. His attention narrowed. He wasn't looking for anything specific, but something was looking for him. The sound reminded him of Calla, not her voice, but her gentleness, the patience she carried, the softness that once shaped their home. He stepped closer to the tables. Children colored, painted, chatted, yet the laughter he heard stood out. It held a warmth that felt strangely personal. He moved toward the source, each step steady but cautious, as if bracing for something he didn't understand yet. And then he saw them. A little girl leaning over her drawing, her features focused and calm. A little boy adjusting his grip on a pencil with determination. 2 faces so familiar they made his breath thin. He stopped completely, unable to move. The moment Riven got a clearer look at the children, his world shifted. The girl lifted her head, her eyes large and steady, eyes he recognized. Not because he had seen her before, but because he had seen them on his own reflection. The boy frowned at his drawing, brows furrowing in the same way Riven's did whenever he tried to solve a stubborn problem. Their expressions, their posture, even the way they held their pencils mirrored pieces of him. And pieces of someone else. Calla. He inhaled sharply, his chest tightening. His vision blurred slightly as reality settled around him. There was no doubt, no possibility of coincidence. They carried his features, his mannerisms, his quiet focus. They also carried Calla's calm nature. 2 children, around the age of 4 or 5. 5 years since she left. 5 years since he saw her. 5 years since the night that changed everything. He felt the pieces align with painful clarity. The timeline, her disappearance, her silence, her determination to never be found, his failure to protect her, his mother's cruelty, his hesitation. These children were his. These children were hers. These children were the family he didn't know he had lost. His knees weakened slightly. He reached for the back of a nearby chair, gripping it with a trembling hand. His throat tightened, making it hard to swallow. His mind raced with questions he wasn't prepared for. Did she raise them alone? Were they safe? Did they ever ask about their father? Did they know he existed? Why didn't she tell him? But beneath every question was one deeper truth. He didn't deserve to ask. He stared at the twins, absorbing every detail, their small hands, their focused faces, their gentle expressions. He felt something he hadn't felt in a long time. Hope and heartbreak colliding at once. Calla noticed Riven before he noticed her. She had been walking back toward the twins with a cup of water for rinsing brushes when she saw him pause, glance toward the tables, then walk with measured steps in their direction. Her breath stilled, but her face remained composed. She didn't step back. She didn't rush forward. She simply stood in place for a moment, steadying herself. 5 years had passed, yet seeing him again stirred old memories, soft ones, painful ones, all intertwined. When she began walking toward the twins again, she did so with measured calm. Her movements never rushed. She placed the cup beside their papers, smoothing a strand of Lauren's hair and adjusting Caleb's sleeve. The twins barely noticed. They were absorbed in their artwork. Riven's gaze lifted at the same moment she straightened. Their eyes met across the table. Time didn't slow. Nothing dramatic happened. But something shifted inside both of them. Calla held his gaze with quiet strength. She didn't flinch or appear apologetic. She stood tall, poised, grounded, the woman she grew into after leaving the life they shared. Years of healing reflected in her posture. She no longer carried the tension she once held in his home. Riven felt speech leave him. He took a hesitant step forward, then stopped, unsure if approaching would frighten the twins or unsettle Calla. He had imagined seeing her again countless times, but none of those imagined moments felt like this. Calla's expression remained neutral, neither warm nor cold, simply present. Her calmness didn't surprise him. Her strength did. She glanced briefly at the twins, then back at him. Riven, she said softly. His name sounded familiar and foreign all at once. He swallowed, his heartbeat loud in his ears. Calla, he whispered. Her voice didn't tremble. His did. They stood across from each other, not close enough to touch, but not so far that they felt like strangers. The twins kept coloring, unaware of the world tilting around them. Riven tried to speak, but words didn't come easily. He had planned apologies in his mind for years, but now, faced with a woman who rebuilt her life without him, he felt unprepared. Calla waited, not impatiently, not expectantly, just waiting, giving him space to find his voice. He exhaled shakily. I didn't know, he said, his eyes drifting to the twins. She nodded once. I know. You had them after you left? He asked gently. Yes. 3 weeks later, I found out. His hand tightened around the back of the chair he held. Why didn't you tell me? Calla's expression didn't harden. It didn't soften. It remained calm. You weren't in a place to protect me then. I didn't want to raise children in conflict. He lowered his gaze. Her honesty didn't feel like a wound. It felt like truth. I looked for you, he said quietly. I tried. I know, she replied. But I needed peace for them. Her words carried no anger, no resentment, only clarity. Riven nodded slowly, accepting the weight of her decision. They're beautiful, he said, his voice breaking slightly. Calla finally glanced at the twins with a small smile. They are. The children didn't look up yet, focused on their drawings. Riven felt his chest tighten with longing, awe, and uncertainty. May I? He paused, unsure how to ask. May I speak to them? Calla studied him for a moment, then gave a small, thoughtful nod. Gently. It was the first bit of trust she offered him in 5 years, and he treated it with the care it deserved. Riven approached the table slowly, aware that every step mattered. He didn't reach out immediately. He crouched down to their level, wanting them to see him without feeling pressure. Hi, he said softly. Caleb looked up first, tilting his head. Hi. Lauren lifted her eyes next, studying him with the same calm curiosity Calla displayed when assessing a situation. Riven smiled gently. What are you drawing? A house, Caleb replied proudly. But the roof was wrong. I fixed it. That's impressive, Riven said. You figured it out fast. Caleb brightened. He rarely received praise from strangers, and the compliment warmed him. He turned to Lauren. And what about you? A garden, she murmured. With wide windows. Riven's chest tightened. Wide windows. Calla always loved wide windows. She said they made rooms feel hopeful. It's beautiful, he whispered. Lauren blinked, unsure why his voice sounded emotional. He didn't touch them. He didn't ask personal questions. He simply admired their work, letting them feel seen, not overwhelmed. Caleb pointed at Riven. You look like us. Lauren nodded thoughtfully. You do. Riven swallowed hard. He looked up at Calla, who didn't flinch or interrupt. Yes, he said quietly, turning back to the twins. I think we share a lot. The twins seemed satisfied with that answer and returned to their drawings, comfortable in his presence. Riven stayed kneeling, absorbing every detail. The curl of Caleb's hair, the soft line of Lauren's jaw, the shared features that tied them to him in ways he couldn't describe. Calla watched the scene unfold with steady eyes. This wasn't reconciliation. This wasn't closure. This was the first step toward a path she wasn't sure about yet. But the moment held something important. It wasn't forced. It wasn't rushed. It was gentle. For the first time, Riven understood what Calla meant when she said she wanted peace. When the twins returned to their artwork, Riven slowly rose to his feet. He moved back toward Calla, giving her the space she needed, but staying close enough to show he wasn't retreating. His voice stayed low. Thank you for letting me meet them, he said. Calla nodded. It was time. Her tone wasn't warm, but it wasn't closed. It rested somewhere in the space between past and possibility. They seem happy, he added. They are, she replied. They've grown in stability, in calm. Riven absorbed her words. Calla wasn't boasting. She was stating the environment she fought to create, an environment he hadn't given her. They deserve everything you've given them, he said sincerely. She glanced at him, studying the sincerity in his face. He looked older, not worn out, but matured. The sharpness he once carried had softened. His posture held humility, not pride. What do you want now, Riven? She asked quietly. There was no challenge in her tone, only clarity. He took a breath. I want to know them, and I want to make things right, with you. Slowly. On your terms. Calla didn't respond immediately. She looked at the twins. She watched Lauren adjust Caleb's pencil. She saw the safety they felt in the world she built. I'm not promising anything, she said finally. I'm not asking for promises, he replied. Only a chance. Their eyes met again, not as former spouses, not as broken pieces, but as parents standing at the edge of a new beginning. Calla exhaled softly. We can talk, later. Somewhere quiet. Riven nodded. Whenever you're ready. Healing didn't begin with forgiveness. It began with willingness. And in that moment, both of them showed a small, shared willingness to see what might grow from the ashes of what they once had. It wasn't reconciliation. It wasn't resolution. It was the quiet start of something new, something slow, steady, and filled with possibility. After the event ended, Calla led the twins outside to the community center's small courtyard. They ran ahead toward the bubble station set up by volunteers, leaving her and Riven a few quiet moments to themselves. She walked toward a wooden bench under a modest tree and sat with careful composure. Riven followed, stopping for a second as if asking permission before joining her on the other end of the bench. A gentle breeze carried the sound of children laughing nearby. The world felt strangely calm, almost as if nature sensed the heaviness in the air and softened itself for their sake. Calla kept her hands folded in her lap. Riven rested his on his knees, palms pressed together. Neither spoke immediately. Calla didn't rush the silence. She understood its purpose. Not all silence harmed. Some created space for clarity to enter. She looked ahead, watching her twins chase floating bubbles with wide smiles. Riven watched them too, his expression a mix of longing, awe, and regret. After a minute, Calla said quietly, "They like this place. It feels safe to them." Riven nodded, swallowing softly. "They're beautiful," he said again, not as flattery but as truth. "They carry so much of you." Calla gave a small breath through her nose. "And you." That acknowledgement held weight. It was the first time she verbally connected him to them. The air between them settled. Calla didn't lean away, but she maintained the physical boundary the bench allowed. Riven respected it. He didn't inch closer or attempt gestures that might unsettle her. He waited. He followed her lead. She turned slightly toward him. "We should talk." He nodded once. "Yes, we should." The twins' laughter echoed again, grounding the moment with warmth. This wasn't a confrontation. This wasn't a reunion soaked in anger or blame. It was two adults, shaped by time and distance, finally facing the truth they left behind years earlier. And for the first time since the night she left, they were ready to speak honestly. Riven took a slow breath, gathering his thoughts. He didn't want to start with the wrong words. He had rehearsed apologies in his head for years, but none felt right until now. He leaned forward slightly, elbows on his knees, and spoke with a steady voice. "Calla, I'm sorry," he said plainly. "I failed you. I failed our marriage, and nothing I say will erase that." She didn't interrupt. She didn't look away. She gave him the space to continue. "I should have stood up for you that night. I should have protected you. I should have spoken," he said, each admission clear and measured. "I knew you were hurting. I saw you shrink around her. I saw how you tried to keep the peace. And instead of defending you, I convinced myself it wasn't as bad as it was." His eyes lowered. "That was cowardly. And you paid the price for my hesitation." Calla's gaze softened slightly, not out of pity but out of recognition that he wasn't hiding behind excuses. He continued, "I made silence my habit. I thought staying quiet avoided conflict. I thought it made things easier. But all it did was make you carry everything alone." A small breeze lifted a strand of her hair. She tucked it behind her ear, her face never wavering. "I'm not asking for forgiveness," he said quietly. "I'm not asking for another chance. Not now. I just need you to know I understand what I cost us." He looked up finally, meeting her eyes. His expression held no defensiveness, no justification, only truth. "You deserved someone who spoke up the second she crossed the line," he said. "You deserved someone who protected you without hesitation, someone who made you feel safe in your own home. I should have been that man." He inhaled, voice lower now. "I'm sorry, Calla, for everything, for my silence, for the hurt, for losing you." She looked at him for a long moment. Riven held still, expecting nothing, accepting everything. Calla finally spoke, her voice soft. "Thank you for not explaining it away." It was the first acknowledgement that his apology reached her. Calla looked down at her hands for a moment before speaking. She didn't rush, didn't force emotion, didn't tighten her voice. She began with calm honesty. "I didn't leave because of the slap," she said. "I left because of what came after." Riven listened closely, not daring to interrupt. "You looked at me," she continued, "right after it happened, and you hesitated. That moment told me everything I needed to know. It told me I was alone in that room." Her voice stayed soft, not sharp. "If you had stepped forward, even one step, if you had said one word, I would have stayed. I didn't expect you to be perfect. I didn't expect you to fight every battle. I just needed to know you were with me." She exhaled slowly. "But you weren't." Riven's jaw tightened, grief moving through him. But he didn't speak. Calla lifted her gaze again, steady. "I tried for months. I tried to be patient, to be respectful, to believe your mother would adjust. But every visit brought another wound. I started to feel smaller in my own home." She traced the edge of the bench lightly with her thumb. "You always said silence meant peace. But for me, it meant something different. It meant I had to swallow hurt, so the house stayed quiet." Her tone didn't shift with anger. It stayed clear, reflective. "When she slapped me, that wasn't the worst part. The worst part was realizing I was asking myself to endure more than I should. The children's laughter floated through the air again. Calla glanced at them before continuing. I didn't leave to punish you. I left to protect myself. And when I found out I was pregnant, protecting myself became protecting them. She paused. I didn't leave because I stopped loving you. I left because love wasn't enough if I didn't feel safe. Riven's breath shook, but he held steady. Calla gave a small nod, as if concluding a long, gentle truth. I've healed a lot since then. I don't carry anger. I don't carry resentment. Just lessons. Her calmness didn't minimize the pain. It made the story deeper. For a moment, neither of them spoke. The weight of everything shared settled between them, not crushing, but clarifying. The years apart had shaped them both, and the conversation revealed how much they had changed. Riven finally nodded, accepting her truth without resistance. I understand now, he said quietly. Not fully because I didn't live your experience, but enough to know I failed you. Calla studied him with thoughtful eyes. And I understand you weren't trying to hurt me. You didn't know how to handle conflict, especially with someone you grew up respecting. He looked down, humbled. That doesn't excuse anything. I'm not offering excuses, she replied gently. I'm acknowledging that people can grow. I can see that you have. Riven glanced at her, surprised by the sincerity in her tone. You're different, she said, quieter in a steadier way, more aware. You speak with intention now. Her recognition touched him more than he expected. I've worked on myself, he admitted. A lot. I can see that too. The tension in the air eased slightly. Not because everything was forgiven, but because everything was seen. Calla continued, I don't want our past to define the future, not for the twins, not for us. But I also don't want to pretend it didn't happen. He nodded again. We don't have to pretend. We just have to move forward, honestly. She appreciated that response. No pushing, no rushing, no assumption that a single conversation solved years of hurt. Riven rubbed his palms together slowly. I want to earn a place in their lives. Not through promises, through presence. Calla didn't hesitate. They deserve that. He met her eyes. So do you. Something warm flickered in her expression, something small but unmistakable. A sign that understanding was replacing old wounds. The world around them continued with its light afternoon sounds, but the bench felt like a quiet center where two people, once broken by silence, were beginning to rebuild communication. This wasn't reconciliation. This wasn't a reunion fueled by emotion alone. It was understanding, the foundation of anything real. After a long moment, Calla shifted slightly on the bench, her voice steady again. Riven, I'm not ready to define anything yet. I need time. The twins need stability. This isn't something we rush. He nodded immediately. I agree. I don't want to force anything. I want to move at the pace you're comfortable with. She appreciated how grounded he sounded. No impatience. No defensiveness. They're still young, she said. They need consistency. If you're going to be in their lives, it has to be steady, not occasional. I can do that, he replied. I want to show up. Not disappear when things get uncomfortable. His tone held conviction, and Calla didn't doubt it. She had spent years healing. She could now see sincerity clearly when it appeared. I don't want them to be confused, she added. They're sensitive. They read emotions quickly. I'll be careful, he said. And, honest. Calla's shoulders relaxed slightly, a sign of trust entering the conversation. Good. Because trust is something we rebuild, not declare. Riven let out a slow breath, almost relieved by how directly she stated it. I'm willing to do that work. She turned to him again. And there's another part. We both need to separate the past from the present. What happened shaped us, but it doesn't decide everything that comes next. He nodded. I understand. They watched the twins for a moment. Lauren helped Caleb open a small container of bubbles. They laughed softly when the wind carried bubbles across the courtyard. Calla smiled faintly. They're my world. Everything I do revolves around giving them a peaceful life. Riven absorbed that. Then let me fit into that world respectfully. She didn't smile in return, but something gentle passed across her expression. We can begin with small steps, short visits, conversations, letting them lead the pace too. He accepted that plan wholeheartedly. I'll follow your guidance. Calla finally exhaled. Then we start slowly, carefully, thoughtfully. It wasn't a promise of reconciliation. It was a promise of patience. The conversation settled into a natural pause, one shaped not by discomfort but by reflection. Calla watched the twins chase bubbles across the courtyard. Riven watched them too, seeing pieces of himself in their movements, recognizing how much he had missed without even knowing they existed. Calla spoke softly. Healing looks different for everyone. For me, it meant creating stability, choosing peace, raising them without tension in the background. Riven nodded. For me, it meant accepting responsibility, not hiding from what I caused. Learning to speak up, learning to show up. Their words didn't compete. They complemented each other. Calla continued. Healing isn't about forgetting. It's about growing into someone you can live with. Riven echoed her tone. And making choices that honor the people you hurt. They shared a quiet moment of mutual understanding. If you're listening, share your thoughts in the comments. What does real healing mean to you? Is it space? Accountability? Time? Your perspective may help someone else watching this story. Calla shifted her attention back to Riven. I don't know what the future looks like, but I'm open to seeing where careful steps lead. Riven offered a gentle nod. That's more than I hoped for, and I won't take it lightly. They both sat in silence again, but this silence felt different from the one in their marriage long ago. This silence held possibility. It held willingness. It held the soft beginning of healing. The twins ran toward them moments later, breathless and excited. Caleb held up his bubble wand proudly. Lauren leaned against Calla's arm, smiling shyly at Riven. He smiled back, not forcing anything, simply present. And in that simple moment, a new chapter began. Not with certainty, but with intention. Riven didn't rush into their lives. He followed the pace Calla set. Their first official visit took place a week after the reunion. Calla invited him to meet them at a small community park near her townhouse. She chose a spot that felt open, neutral, and familiar for the twins. She wanted them to feel comfortable before anything else. When Riven arrived, he paused near the entrance, taking slow breaths. He didn't want his emotions to overwhelm the moment. He watched the twins from afar for a few seconds. Caleb ran toward the swings, full of energy. Lauren inspected a patch of flowers, her attention drawn to the smallest details. Their personalities were clear even from a distance. Calla walked toward him with her usual calm expression. She greeted him with a polite nod. No smiles, no coldness, simply presence. They're excited today, she said quietly. I'm glad, he replied, keeping his tone soft. She gestured lightly. You can join them. Riven approached slowly. Caleb noticed him first and waved eagerly. Lauren looked up next, her eyes curious but warm. They didn't treat him like a stranger this time. They treated him like someone who belonged there, even if only in a small way. Hi again, Riven said gently. Caleb pointed at the swings. Push me? Riven hesitated, glancing at Calla for confirmation. She nodded once. He stepped behind Caleb and began pushing with careful, controlled movements, making sure the swings stayed steady. Caleb laughed every time he swung forward, kicking his legs happily. Lauren walked over and stood beside Riven, her hands clasped. You came back, she said quietly. Yes, he replied. I said I would. She studied him for a moment, then nodded in approval. Good. Something eased in his chest. These small signs of trust meant more to him than anything else. Calla watched from a distance. She didn't intervene. She didn't rush them. She allowed the natural bond forming between them to unfold at its own pace. Riven didn't try to impress the twins. He didn't overload them with gifts or promises. He showed up. He stayed present. He listened. It was the first step in earning a place in their lives, steady, intentional, and grounded. As weeks passed, Calla allowed Riven to visit more often, sometimes at the park, sometimes in her living room, where the twins spread out picture books, crayons, and worksheets across a low table. Riven entered these moments with quiet humility, grateful for every opportunity. One evening, Calla prepared tea in the kitchen while Riven knelt beside the twins. Caleb struggled with counting exercises, frowning at the numbers on the page. Riven watched him for a moment before leaning closer. Let's try it together, he said. Show me how you think about it. Caleb began counting with small pebbles he collected earlier. His approach wasn't neat, but it made sense to him. Riven didn't correct him. He followed his lead, encouraging him to keep going until Caleb finally grinned in triumph. You did that, Riven said, placing a hand lightly on the table instead of reaching for the boy directly. He wanted to respect boundaries. Caleb sat straighter, confidence glowing through him. Lauren worked on a writing sheet beside them, forming letters carefully. She paused occasionally to look at Riven, checking if he noticed her progress. He always did. "That's a clean line," he commented softly. "You're very precise." She blushed faintly, hiding her smile behind her pencil. Calla observed from the kitchen doorway. The sight felt surreal, Riven sitting cross-legged on the floor, helping their children with the small tasks that shaped their days. He wasn't distracted. He wasn't rushing. He wasn't performing. He was involved. The twins began asking questions, sharing small stories, pulling him deeper into their routine. Riven responded with patience, even when Caleb lost focus or Lauren asked something unexpectedly thoughtful. The room felt balanced. Calla didn't speak much during these moments. She didn't want to disrupt the organic connection forming, but she felt something shift inside her. A quiet warmth. Not trust, not yet, but acknowledgement. He was trying. He was consistent. He was showing up in all the places where silence once replaced action. Later, as he stood to leave, Lauren tugged his sleeve gently. "Will you come again?" "If your mom says yes," he replied. Calla met Lauren's eyes, then Riven's. "Yes," she said softly. "He can." Caleb loved anything mechanical. He often dismantled small toys just to see how the pieces fit together. Calla tried her best to keep up with his curiosity, but some items proved too complicated for her repairs. When Riven visited one afternoon, he found Caleb sitting cross-legged on the rug beside a broken toy car, brow furrowed in deep concentration. Riven crouched down. "What's going on here?" "It's stuck," Caleb said. The wheel fell off. Riven picked up the car, examining it with the same thoroughness he applied to renovation plans. "You want to fix it together?" Caleb nodded eagerly. Riven rolled up his sleeves and joined him on the rug. He didn't take the toy away. He guided Caleb's hands, explaining each small step in simple words. "This piece locks here, and this holds it steady. You're doing most of the work, I'm just helping you see it." Caleb's face lit up as the wheel snapped back into place. "It works." "You fixed it," Riven said gently. Calla watched from the couch, her expression softening without her realizing it. She had never seen Riven like this, patient, hands-on, and slow enough to match a child's pace. Caleb tested the car across the floor, cheering when it rolled smoothly. Then he rushed back and pressed the toy against Riven's knee. "You should take one turn." Riven chuckled quietly. "Okay." He pushed the car forward with a gentle flick. Caleb laughed and ran to catch it, returning proudly with a small "you did it." The moment was simple, but Calla felt its weight. This was fatherhood, not grand declarations but steady involvement. Later, Caleb tugged at Calla's sleeve. "He's good at fixing things." She smiled. "Yes. He always has been." Riven overheard, and something warm flickered in his expression. It wasn't pride. It was gratitude. Gratitude that she still saw parts of him that mattered. As he prepared to leave, Caleb held out the toy car. "Can you fix my robot next time?" "If your mom agrees," Riven said again. Calla nodded once more, the choice becoming easier each visit. He was earning trust through presence, not promises. Lauren loved drawing more than anything else. She filled pages with houses, gardens, and little worlds shaped by her imagination. Riven noticed this during one of his visits when she quietly slid a paper across the table, waiting to see if he'd look. He picked it up carefully. "This is beautiful," he said. Lauren's cheeks warmed. "It's a house." "I can see that," he replied. "The windows, they're wide. You must like open light." She nodded. "Mom likes it too." Riven felt the words land gently in his chest. He remembered how Calla used to talk about open spaces, soft sunlight, and rooms that felt welcoming. Lauren inherited that sense of comfort. He knelt beside her. "Tell me what you like about drawing." She shrugged shyly. "It makes things quiet." He understood that more than she knew. "Do you want to learn how to add depth?" he asked. "Make the house look like it's standing instead of flat." Her eyes widened. "You can show me?" "If you want me to." She slid over to make room. He sat beside her, guiding her through small techniques, tilting lines, shading corners, using lighter strokes on one side. She followed every step with intense focus. "You're a natural," he said gently. "No," she whispered. "I'm learning." "You're both," he corrected softly. Calla overheard from the kitchen and watched the scene with a mixture of surprise and softness. Riven wasn't forcing admiration. He was nurturing it, not by taking over but by encouraging Lauren to expand her skills. Lauren drew the next line on her own, glancing at him for approval. He nodded with genuine pride. She beamed. Later that evening, when Riven prepared to leave, Lauren approached him with a drawing folded neatly. "This is for you." He accepted it carefully. "Thank you." She tapped the page. "Put it somewhere safe." "I will." The exchange was simple, but the bond was real. She trusted him enough to share her art, something deeply personal for her. Calla noticed the change too, the steady forming of connection, the gentleness in his guidance, the warmth he offered without pressure. He wasn't just joining their world, he was learning how to belong in it. Throughout every visit, Riven made one thing clear through his actions: he respected Calla's boundaries. He never arrived without confirming first. He never stayed longer than she permitted. He never assumed access to anything, not conversations, not decisions, not personal space. The first time he asked if he could take the twins to the park alone, he phrased it carefully. "Only if you feel comfortable," he said. And only for a short time. Calla appreciated the way he asked. Thoughtfully, without pressure. "I'm not sure yet," she replied honestly. "That's okay," he said without hesitation. "I'll follow your pace." He didn't ask again until she brought it up herself weeks later. He also respected emotional boundaries. He didn't attempt long conversations about their past unless she initiated them. He didn't speak about reconciliation. He didn't ask personal questions that might reopen wounds. His approach remained consistent, present, patient, and aware. Occasionally, when their hands brushed while passing items or helping the twins, he pulled back slightly to avoid crossing lines prematurely. These small, deliberate gestures didn't go unnoticed. Calla observed them with quiet appreciation. Respect felt different coming from the man he had become. It wasn't performative. It was steady. He also respected her parenting style. If the twins asked for snacks she hadn't approved, he redirected them. If Caleb grew restless and she gave a signal, he stepped back and let her lead. If Lauren became quiet, he allowed her space rather than crowding her with questions. Every boundary he honored brought Calla a step closer to peace in his presence. One evening, as he prepared to leave, he paused at the door. "Thank you for trusting me today," he said softly. "Trust grows," she replied. He held her gaze for a moment, not asking for more, not pushing further. "I'll continue to earn it." She nodded once, acknowledging the truth in his words, not the hope, but the action behind them. Respect was the foundation of everything he was rebuilding. Riven knew he couldn't move forward without addressing the pain he caused beyond Calla. Her mother carried quiet worry for years, supporting her daughter through pregnancy, birth, and early motherhood without Riven ever knowing. He reached out one afternoon and asked Calla, "Would your mother be willing to speak with me?" Calla hesitated. "Why?" "Because she protected you when I didn't," he replied. "And I need to acknowledge that." She considered this, then gave him the number. "Don't expect her to go easy on you." "I don't want easy," he said. "I want honest." Calla's mother agreed to meet at a small cafe. When Riven arrived, she was already seated, her expression guarded but composed. She didn't stand when he approached. She didn't smile. He sat across from her, hands folded. "Thank you for meeting me." She nodded stiffly. "This isn't for you. This is for my daughter." He accepted that without argument. "I'm sorry," he said immediately, "for everything. For failing her, for abandoning her in the moment she needed protection, for leaving her to raise children alone. You stepped in when I didn't, and you shouldn't have had to." Her face softened slightly, not forgiving but listening. "She deserved a partner who stood up for her," he continued. "I became someone who disappointed her. I regret that more than anything." Calla's mother didn't respond right away. Then she asked, "Why now?" "Because I've grown, because I understand what I did, because I understand what she carried, and because I want to be accountable to the people who cared for her when I didn't." She investigated his expression with the same careful intensity Calla carried. "You hurt her more than you realize," she said. "I know," he whispered. "And you missed years with your children," she added. "I know that too." A long pause followed. Finally, she sighed quietly. "I can respect a man who accepts responsibility without excuses." Riven bowed his head slightly. "Thank you." It wasn't forgiveness. It wasn't approval. But it was a beginning. Connection didn't return in a single moment. It appeared in small ways, tiny sparks that signaled an emotional shift between Calla and Riven. One afternoon, after spending time with the twins, Riven offered to help tidy the living room. Calla usually refused help, but this time she paused before saying, "You can gather the crayons." He smiled faintly. "Okay." Their hands reached for the same box once, brushing lightly. Neither of them pulled back too quickly. Neither lingered. It was a small, balanced touch, acknowledged, then released. Another moment happened while watching the twins play outside. Caleb tripped and scraped his knee. Riven reacted immediately but didn't rush in front of Calla. He waited, letting her lead. When she nodded, he knelt beside Caleb and cleaned the small scrape with calm hands. Calla observed the scene, her expression softening almost imperceptibly. During another visit, Lauren drew a picture of 4 people standing under a large tree: Calla, Caleb, herself, and Riven. She handed it to Calla first. "This is our family drawing." Calla's breath caught for a second. Riven heard the words too and looked at Calla for guidance. She didn't shut the moment down. She simply said softly, "It's lovely." A few evenings later, Calla walked Riven to the door. As he reached for the handle, she said quietly, "You're patient with them. They feel safe with you." He turned slightly. "That means everything to me." She didn't smile, but her tone warmed. "Thank you for being consistent." These were the small reconnections, gentle shifts, not declarations. They showed that Calla's guard wasn't disappearing, but it was softening. Slowly, carefully. Every moment wasn't dramatic. Most were quiet. The kind of quiet that builds the foundation of something real. Romance didn't rush back into their lives. It surfaced in the smallest details, subtle, cautious, and born from respect rather than nostalgia. One evening, after a visit that lasted longer than usual, Calla walked him to the porch. The sun was setting, casting soft light across her face. Riven paused before stepping down the stairs, unsure whether to say goodnight or thank you or nothing at all. Calla folded her arms loosely, her posture relaxed. "You're getting better at reading them," she said softly. He smiled gently. "They make it easy." She exhaled with a small, warm sound, almost a laugh. Something inside him shifted at that familiar softness. 5 years had passed, yet her laugh still stirred a place in him he thought had gone quiet. A light breeze moved across the porch. Their eyes met for a moment longer than necessary. Not intense, not charged, just aware. Riven stepped back slightly, giving her space. "I'll see you on Friday, if that still works for you." "It does," she said. He hesitated, not out of doubt, but out of care. "Calla, I'm not trying to rebuild the past. I'm trying to build something healthier, if you're open to that one day." Her gaze drifted to the twins' room upstairs, then back to him. "One day," she repeated quietly, but slowly. His shoulders softened in relief. "Slow is good." She nodded. "Good night, Riven." "Good night, Calla." As he stepped off the porch, she watched him walk down the path. She wasn't analyzing him. She wasn't comparing him to the man she married. She was observing him as he was now, patient, steady, and willing. Inside her chest, something shifted, not trust fully returning, not love resurfacing, but the earliest sign of possibility. Soft, warm, cautious. The beginning of tension that wasn't forced or dramatic, just real. Calla didn't agree to formal dates, but she accepted simple outings with the twins. She believed reconnection should grow through shared experiences, not pressure. So their next step became weekend visits to the local outdoor market, an easy place where people wandered at their own tempo, where nothing felt forced. The first time they went together, the twins darted ahead to inspect baskets of fruit. Vendors called out soft greetings, offering samples of fresh berries and sliced peaches. Caleb grabbed one eagerly, while Lauren approached with caution before taking a tiny bite. Riven stayed close, but didn't hover. He let Calla lead. When the twins tugged her hands, he stayed one step behind, his presence steady but unobtrusive. Calla noticed the difference. He didn't slip into control. He didn't try to dominate the moment with explanations or grand gestures. He existed beside them, not in front of them. At a bakery stall, Caleb pointed at a tray of small pastries. "Mom, can we get those?" he asked. Calla nodded. Before she reached for her wallet, Riven stepped forward slightly. "May I?" he asked. Only after she nodded did he pay. Lauren clutched her pastry and stood between Calla and Riven, watching both of them with quiet awareness. Children sense emotional shifts before adults announce them. She didn't understand the full story, but she felt something soft in the air, something new. As they continued through the market, Calla found herself easing into conversation with Riven. She told him which produce vendor had the best tomatoes, how the flower stall donated unsold bouquets to the community center, how the bakery changed its pastry menu every month. He listened with real interest, not polite nods. He asked simple questions, careful not to intrude. She appreciated that. One of the reasons she once loved him was the way he listened early in their marriage, fully, and now he was doing it again, intentionally. When the twins tired, they sat together at a small table under a shade tree. Lauren leaned her head on Calla's arm. Caleb played with the bag of pastries. Riven sat across from them, watching the gentle stillness of the moment unfold. This was the beginning of something, not romantic yet, but undeniably warming. As trust grew, Calla allowed Riven to stay for simple dinners. Nothing elaborate, nothing formal, just meals shared in a calm home, where the twins could speak freely and adults could exist without tension. The first time he stayed, the twins insisted on helping set the table. Caleb placed the forks randomly, and Lauren corrected him with soft sighs. Riven watched their dynamic with a faint smile, the kind that reached his eyes, quiet and sincere. Calla cooked pasta with vegetables, a dish she often prepared during busy weeks. Riven offered to help chop peppers, and she allowed it. His movements were cautious at first, as though he feared stepping into a space he no longer had the right to enter. But Calla guided him with brief instructions. He followed each one without complaint. When they sat to eat, the twins filled the room with stories about school, art projects, broken toys, and new discoveries. Riven responded with attention to each detail, never rushing them. After dinner, the twins played nearby while Calla washed dishes. Riven stepped beside her. "Can I take these?" he asked, lifting a stack of plates. She nodded, handing them over. They stood side by side, quietly, comfortably, washing and drying dishes like two people learning new rhythm. Not the rhythm of their old marriage, but a new one shaped by respect and slow rebuilding. When the twins finally drifted to sleep, Calla walked him to the door. He paused before stepping out. "This was good," he said. She nodded. "Yes." It was. Their exchanges remained simple. No declarations, no assumptions. Just small confirmations of shared warmth beginning to grow. Quiet dinners became a pattern. Not frequent, not romantic, but meaningful. They allowed Calla to observe how much he had changed, how patient he was, how gentle, how thoughtful in the way he moved around her and the twins. It was the slow, steady kind of reconnection that didn't announce itself loudly. It settled quietly in the background, shaping something new. One Saturday afternoon, Calla took the twins to a pottery class, and she invited Riven to join. He accepted without hesitation. The instructor guided families through shaping small bowls and cups. The twins struggled at first, their clay collapsing whenever they pressed too hard. When Caleb's bowl sunk inward for the third time, he let out an exaggerated groan. Calla laughed, soft, warm, spontaneous. It was a sound Riven hadn't heard in years. It caught his attention immediately. Her shoulders relaxed, her eyes brightened, and her whole posture shifted into something lighter. The sound didn't carry bitterness or guardedness. It carried joy. Riven watched her for a few seconds longer than he intended. He didn't stare. He didn't approach her. He simply absorbed the change and felt something loosen inside him, something hopeful. Calla noticed his gaze and turned slightly, raising a brow. "What?" "Nothing," he said quietly, but his eyes softened. "It's good to see you happy." She didn't deflect the comment. She didn't retreat. She simply held his gaze for a moment, an acknowledgement passing between them. Later, while helping Lauren smooth the edges of her tiny clay cup, Calla laughed again. When the girl tried to hide her uneven work by placing stickers along the rim, Riven smiled to himself. He remembered how much he had loved her laughter years ago. Hearing it now reminded him not of the past, but of possibility. Calla caught him watching again, but didn't shut down the moment. Her expression softened, as if she understood what he saw, her joy returning in small doses. A few minutes later, when Caleb proudly displayed his lopsided bowl, Riven laughed softly beside her. Their laughter blended for a moment, a small harmony not forced or nostalgic, but natural. It didn't feel like reclaiming something old. It felt like discovering something new. Rebuilding trust required more than showing up. It required consistency, and Riven offered it without faltering. He didn't interrupt Calla when she spoke. He didn't rush her decisions. He didn't shrink from difficult conversations. One evening, after a park visit, Caleb grew frustrated trying to tie his shoelaces. He threw the shoe aside with a glare. Calla moved to help him, but Riven gently gestured. "Let me try." He knelt and showed Caleb slowly, repeating the steps with patience even when Caleb lost focus. "It's okay," he said each time. "Try again." Calla watched closely. Years ago, Riven's perfectionism often caused tension. He struggled with patience in small tasks, especially when he was stressed. Now, he approached challenges differently, steady, calm, aware of emotions instead of dismissing them. Later that evening, when Caleb finally tied the shoelace on his own, he shouted, "I did it." Riven clapped softly. "Yes, you did." Calla observed him with quiet surprise. This steadiness, this gentleness was new, not an act, not a show, a real change shaped by the years he spent reflecting and taking accountability. During another visit, Lauren spilled water on her drawing and burst into tears. Old Riven might have panicked or tried to fix it too quickly. New Riven crouched beside her and said, "It's okay to be upset. Let's start another one together." Calla knelt on the other side, witnessing him respond with sensitivity she never saw before. She also noticed small things he didn't mention. He arrived early, but waited outside until the exact time she allowed. He never assumed he could hug the twins. He waited for them to approach him. He always checked in about routines, snacks, and boundaries. Respect wasn't something he claimed. It was something he practiced. Calla felt her guard ease, not in a sweeping motion, but in subtle shifts. The warmth she once felt for him wasn't returning blindly. It was returning carefully, shaped by who he was now. And every time she saw him choose steadiness over pride, patience over urgency, she wondered if something new could grow between them. It happened on a quiet evening after a long visit. The twins had fallen asleep early, exhausted from running around the playground. Calla stepped out to the porch to get a little fresh air while Riven prepared to leave. He joined her outside, standing a comfortable distance away. The porch light cast a soft glow, outlining the calm expression she carried. For a moment, neither spoke. The silence felt warm, not heavy. "You handled today well," Calla said, breaking the quiet. Riven smiled faintly. "They make it easy." "You make it easier for them," she replied, her tone gentle. The compliment surprised him. He looked down for a second, then lifted his gaze again. "I'm trying to be someone they can trust." "And me?" she asked, not teasing, but genuinely curious. He hesitated, not out of fear but careful thought. "I'm trying to be someone you don't have to brace yourself around." Calla exhaled slowly, her eyes softening. "That used to be hard." "I know," he admitted quietly. "I didn't understand how much my silence shaped your days." A light breeze passed between them. "People can change," she said softly. "They can," he agreed. "But change means nothing if it doesn't show in daily choices." Calla studied him thoughtfully. He wasn't trying to impress her. He wasn't listing things he had done to improve. He was simply present, steady, and honest. "When I left," she said, "I wasn't angry at you. I was disappointed and tired." He lowered his voice. "I know, and I deserved that disappointment." The emotional distance between them shifted, not closed, but shortened. She turned toward the door, then paused. "You can stay a little longer if you want." He nodded. "Okay." They sat on opposite ends of the porch bench, the space between them gentle, not tense, not forced, simply patient. Riven didn't move closer. He respected her pace, the same way he respected every boundary she set. For the first time in years, Calla didn't feel guarded in his presence. She felt understood. The porch became their quiet meeting place. After the twins fell asleep, Calla would sometimes join Riven outside for a few minutes before he left. These moments weren't planned, they unfolded naturally. One evening, the air carried a soft chill. Calla pulled her cardigan closer, and Riven noticed the movement. He hesitated, then removed his jacket and held it out. She shook her head gently. "I'm fine." He nodded, not pushing, but something in his eyes stayed warm. They sat on the bench again, silence hovering between them comfortably. Calla glanced toward him, noticing the way he relaxed his shoulders, the way. He breathed slower in her presence compared to their early conversations. He no longer carried the tension of trying to prove anything. He simply showed himself. "I'm still learning how to be around you again," she admitted softly. "I'm still learning how to earn that place," he replied. The honesty touched something in her. Her hand rested on the bench between them, fingers relaxed. Riven looked at her hand, then at her face, searching for permission. He didn't move immediately. He let the moment breathe. Finally, with slow intention, he reached halfway, never touching, just placing his hand near hers. Calla didn't pull away. A few seconds passed. She shifted slightly closer, allowing their fingers to brush. Lightly, barely. Riven exhaled softly, not in relief, but in gratitude. He turned his palm upward, offering rather than taking. Calla studied his open hand for a moment, then placed her fingers gently in his. No pressure, no intensity, a soft joining of hands between two people who learned to approach each other with care. The connection wasn't about romance alone. It was about trust, earned, not assumed. Calla felt the warmth of his touch, and instead of retreating, she let herself rest in the moment. Riven held her hand as if it were something fragile he promised to protect. Their hands stayed together until the porch light flickered, reminding them of time. When she finally released him, the moment didn't fade. It lingered in both of their breaths, quiet and meaningful. The kiss didn't happen that night. It happened days later, after another long visit filled with calm routines and laughter. The twins fell asleep early again, worn out from a game of tag. Calla walked Riven to the porch as usual. The air was warm. The porch light glowed softly. The quiet around them felt inviting, not empty. They stood facing each other, their hands brushing briefly from habit now. Gentle, familiar. Calla met his eyes, noticing something new there. Not longing, not desperation, a steady warmth, anchored in respect. "Thank you for today," she said quietly. "Thank you for letting me be part of it," he replied. She didn't step back. He didn't step forward. They simply stood close enough to feel each other's presence. Riven tilted his head slightly. "Calla, may I ask you something?" "You can ask. Do you feel safe with me now?" She paused, letting the question settle. Then she nodded once. "Yes, I do." A soft breath escaped him, almost like a quiet release of 5 years of regret. Calla took a tiny step closer, not enough to close the space entirely, but enough to invite a moment that felt earned. Her eyes stayed steady on his, waiting, not rushing. Riven lifted a hand slowly, giving her full freedom to stop him. She didn't move away. He brushed a loose strand of hair behind her ear, his fingers barely grazing her skin. "Calla," he whispered, not as a plea but as a presence. She lifted her chin slightly, allowing the closeness. With quiet intention he leaned in, slow, gentle, giving her every chance to pause. She didn't. Their lips met softly, not urgent, not emotional chaos. A quiet kiss that carried apology, growth, trust, and the first hint of renewed affection. Calla's hand rested lightly against his chest, not pushing him away, not pulling him closer, simply staying there, acknowledging the moment. When they parted, she didn't retreat. She stayed close, breathing calmly. "That was careful," she murmured. "It needed to be," he replied. The kiss didn't promise a future. It marked a beginning. After the kiss, they stayed on the porch for a gentle moment. No rush, no dramatic declarations, just two people standing close, breathing steadily, letting the meaning settle. Calla finally stepped back slightly, maintaining warmth in her voice. "We're still moving slowly." "Always," Riven replied. "I'm not asking for anything faster." She nodded. "Good." Their calm exchange showed how far they had come, not from passion alone, but from care. The twins shifted softly inside, their footsteps faint. Calla glanced toward the door. "I should check on them." "Of course," Riven said. "Good night, Calla." She opened the door, then paused and turned back. "Riven." "Yes?" She gave the softest, honest smile. "Thank you for changing." He lowered his gaze slightly, humbled. "Thank you for noticing." The porch light flickered gently as she stepped inside, leaving him outside with a quiet sense of hope he hadn't felt in years. If this moment touched you, take a second to like this video. Share it if you believe in second chances done right. And tell us in the comments, what does a healthy second chance look like to you? Every viewer's perspective adds value to the conversation. Someone listening right now might need your insight. Riven walked down the path slowly, not wanting the moment to fade. The kiss wasn't the end of their story. It wasn't even the climax. It was the point where everything they rebuilt, patience, honesty, steady presence, finally took shape. He didn't replay the kiss with intensity. He replayed the meaning. Calla felt safe again. She saw his growth. She allowed him to stand close without fear. It was the kind of progress he once thought impossible. Inside the house, Calla leaned gently against the door for a brief second, steadying her own breath. She wasn't rushing ahead. She wasn't denying the warmth inside her. She was simply acknowledging it. The beginning of a new chapter had arrived. Quiet, patient, earned. The weeks that followed the porch kiss unfolded with care. Nothing rushed. Nothing assumed. Calla held firm to slow steps, and Riven honored every boundary without question. What grew fastest was the twins' bond with him, shaped by small interactions that felt natural. Caleb grew attached to fixing things with Riven. Any time a toy wheel jammed or a puzzle piece bent, he carried it straight to him. Riven accepted each item with gentle patience. He sometimes guided Caleb's hands instead of doing the task himself, which allowed the boy to feel capable, not overshadowed. Their conversations stayed simple. Caleb enjoyed talking about tools and projects, and Riven matched that enthusiasm with steady responses. Lauren bonded differently. She was more observant, slow to trust, and cautious with new attachments. But she loved drawing, and Riven quickly recognized her gift. He brought her sketchbooks with blank pages, not printed outlines, encouraging creativity. He didn't dictate how she should draw. He watched, listened, and asked thoughtful questions about her ideas. Gradually, she leaned toward him during art sessions, allowing him to join her world. Calla saw these moments unfold with a quiet heart. She noticed how the twins looked for him when he arrived, how their steps quickened, how their expressions warmed. They didn't treat him like a guest anymore. They treated him like someone who belonged in their routines. One evening, the twins asked him to read a story before bed. Calla paused, unsure if they were ready to give him such a meaningful place in their nighttime rituals. But when the children waited patiently with hopeful eyes, she nodded. Riven sat on the floor between their beds, book open, voice steady as he read each page. Lauren rested her head on his shoulder. Caleb curled against his side. Calla stood in the doorway, watching the gentle scene unfold. The sound of his voice filled the room, not loud, not demanding, just warm enough to ease the children into sleep. When he closed the book and tucked them in without rushing, Calla saw something she hadn't expected this early. They were bonding with him from a place of safety, not confusion. It was a beginning built on sincerity. Consistency mattered more to Calla than apologies. Words could be comforting, but habits revealed truth. And Riven chose to prove himself through repeated, deliberate action. He arrived when he said he would. He never canceled on the twins. He respected every boundary she set, no matter how small. He didn't ask unnecessary questions or pressure her into defining their relationship prematurely. Calla noticed all of it. One afternoon, after watching him guide Caleb through a math assignment, with remarkable patience, Calla stepped aside to prepare snacks. When Riven left the table to wash his hands, she joined him in the kitchen. "You've changed," she said, her voice soft but clear. He didn't turn it into a moment of pride. He simply nodded. "I'm trying to show the right things, not say them." "You've been steady," she added. "That was my biggest failure in our marriage," he replied. "My silence replaced action. I don't want to repeat that." Calla held his gaze for a few seconds. The acknowledgement didn't feel heavy or emotional. It felt earned. His presence didn't overwhelm her anymore. It grounded her. Later, when they walked the twins to a nearby park, Calla found herself walking beside him naturally. Not out of old habit, but because it felt right. At the swings, when Lauren asked him to push her, Calla stepped back and let the moment belong to them. "You're good with them," she said quietly. Riven lowered his eyes for a second, emotional but controlled. "I want them to feel safe around me, and I want you to feel safe with me." Calla nodded. "I do. Slowly, but I do." It wasn't a declaration of love. It wasn't a promise of immediate reconciliation. It was a clear recognition that his efforts were real, continuous, and sincere. Later that evening, Calla found herself thinking about how far he had come. His growth wasn't dramatic. It came through stable choices repeated daily. That was the kind of consistency she always valued, the kind that protected peace. And now, she could no longer deny the truth. He was becoming the partner she once needed and never had. Riven understood that rebuilding trust meant showing up in the small spaces of life, places where promises mattered most. He never tried to overwhelm Calla with grand gestures or luxury, the way some might attempt to fix a mistake. Instead, he chose daily service, steady presence, and emotional clarity. He cooked meals with the twins on days Kala worked late, following her notes carefully so the children's routines stayed intact. He checked expiration dates, portion sizes, and dietary preferences without needing reminders. He learned how Caleb liked his apples sliced, and how Lauren preferred her pasta plain. He also respected Kala's independence. He didn't offer money or unsolicited help. He didn't insert himself into decisions she needed to make alone. Instead, he positioned himself as support, not interference. One afternoon, Kala struggled with assembling a new shelf. She insisted on doing it alone, but the instructions confused her. Riven stood nearby, watching her efforts without stepping in. Only when she sighed quietly did he ask, "Would you like help?" She handed him the instruction manual with a small smile. Yes. Together they finished the shelf in calm coordination. No frustration, no arguments. Just two adults working side by side, communicating clearly, sharing space naturally. Another time, Caleb misplaced his favorite toy car. Riven searched the entire house, even crawling under the couch to find it. When he emerged covered in dust but holding the toy triumphantly, Caleb hugged him. That hug lasted longer than Riven expected. Kala watched with warmth she didn't try to suppress. Riven also took steps toward personal healing. He met with a counselor to address the habits he once ignored, his tendency to withdraw, his fear of conflict, his reflex to remain silent under pressure. He never bragged about it. Kala only found out when she saw a reminder card in his wallet. "You're working on yourself," she said. "I needed to," he replied. "If I want to be part of your lives, I have to choose growth daily." Kala felt something settle inside her. He wasn't trying to win her back with promises. He was showing her who he had become, and that was worth more than anything he could ever say. The moment that shifted everything happened on a calm evening in Kala's living room. The twins had built a blanket fort and insisted everyone join them inside. Kala hesitated. She wasn't sure whether such closeness would feel rushed, but the twins were excited, and Riven stepped back, waiting for her lead. She nodded gently. "Let's do it." Inside the small fort, the four of them sat together with a lantern-style nightlight creating a warm glow. The twins took turns telling stories, half imaginative, half chaotic, about robots, magical houses, and a rabbit that ate too many carrots. Riven listened with quiet focus, adding small details that made the twins laugh harder. Kala watched the scene unfold from her corner of the fort. The children weren't trying to impress Riven. They weren't performing. They were comfortable, completely themselves, and Riven matched their energy with steady humor and warmth. At one point, Caleb crawled onto Riven's lap without hesitation. Lauren curled against Kala, but her eyes drifted toward Riven often, checking. His reactions as if she wanted reassurance that he was staying. When the twins began to tire, they asked Riven to read another story. He shifted carefully so he wouldn't let the blankets collapse, opened a book, and began reading with a gentle rhythm that soothed the children. Lauren leaned into Kala. Caleb leaned into Riven. For the first time since leaving years ago, Kala felt a strong sense of home, not the home she ran from, but a new one shaped by healing. Halfway through the story, she looked toward Riven. He met her gaze. There was no pressure in his eyes, no urgency, no expectation, just quiet gratitude. The twins drifted off before he finished the story. Kala and Riven carefully placed them in their beds. When they returned to the living room, the fort still stood, glowing softly. "This felt right," Kala said. "It did," he agreed, voice low. For a few seconds, silence filled the room, not empty, but peaceful. Kala realized she didn't feel guarded. She didn't feel tense. She felt steady. It was the first time the four of them felt like a real family. Not forced, not reclaimed, formed through patient, intentional choices. When the house quieted, Kala and Riven stepped onto the porch for a few minutes. The evening breeze was gentle, and the soft porch light framed them in a calm glow. "What happened tonight," Kala said slowly, "taught me something." Riven waited. "Silence can break love," she continued. "Back then, it broke ours. But healing needs patience, not pressure. You've shown that." He nodded. "And respect protects peace. I should have given you that from the start." "You're giving it now," she said. He looked toward the window where the twins slept. "I want them to grow up seeing what steady love looks like." Kala took a quiet breath. Love grows through steady action. That's the lesson I want them to learn. The porch stilled around them. A gentle closeness hovered between them, warm and unhurried. "Riven," Calla said softly, "we're not rushing anything, but I'm willing to keep building step by step," he replied. Calla smiled. "Yes, step by step." If this story moved your heart, take a moment to like this video. Share it with someone who believes in gentle healing and steady love. And subscribe to Love Tales with Mr. Easton for more stories that teach real-life lessons through powerful emotion. Your support keeps these stories alive. Calla leaned against the porch rail. Riven stood beside her, respecting her space while still being close. The night felt peaceful. Healing wasn't a straight line, but it was a path they could walk together, slow, intentional, and grounded in truth. Inside the house, the twins slept with the ease of children who felt safe. Outside, two adults allowed themselves the chance to start over with clarity. This wasn't the end of their story. It was the moment real family began.